I'd like to call this meeting back to order, please. The first item on our agenda is to go out of closed meeting. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed? Chair Bellis?
Aye.
6 ayes.
The next item on the agenda is certification of the closed meeting. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to the affirmative recorded vote in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia hereby certifies to the best of each member's knowledge only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion conveying the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the Board. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed? Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Chair Bellis?
Aye.
6 ayes.
The next item is our invocation, and at this time I'll ask everybody to please stand and give your thoughts on the things before us today. And following the invocation, Mr. Meadows will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Let us pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
And the next item is a delegation. The Virginia Department of Transportation, Mr. David Clark.
Good evening. There wasn't a whole lot of requests last time. I can report, Mr. Tuck isn't here, but he had the question last time on whether the plans for Route 114 that are in the town of Christiansburg is being worked on right now, whether there was a turn lane included in that widening at Majestic. I think it's used a lot to cut through. And it is. There is a turn lane already planned for that. So there are 2 regular through lanes and there will be a turn lane. We're continuing to, we have some more of the service treatment scheduled to go. They've moved to Floyd and Carroll counties right now, but they still have more. And we're going to try to, well, even though the first shot did a pretty good job on 609, we're going to, Willis Hollow, we're going to do another shot on there too when they come back to Montgomery County and work on the regular service treatment. Give it a little more strength, even though I think it looks pretty good right now, but another shot will help it get through the winter a little bit better. We're working on getting Craig's Creek Road service treated as well. That might take a few months. We're hoping to get it before the winter. May not get it before the winter because we got to get that contract out. We will be able to do Blue Springs. I reported on that last time. We're going to try to do this 2/10 of a section of Blue Springs Road that on the other side of the bridge that is closed right now. So traffic that's now having to detour doesn't tear that up and doesn't have to go through the winter with that. That should be done here in the next month or so. And just to let the board know, we've got a request from a resident on Little Camp Road, Route 716. It's the road that goes, if you're going towards Floyd County on Route 8, it goes around, goes under the bridge. There's another one that goes off to the right as well. There was a request for a stop or a yield sign right there from the 2 different directions of sort of the intersection. It's a strange intersection of Little Camp and Homestead. There's no traffic control there right now. There's no stop or yield on either leg. There probably should be one out in one place or the other. I took a look at it, and to me it looks like the most logical place would be on the Homestead roadside, one to the right. And I looked at the plans from the bridge today, and those indicate that that was the intended through movement was on Little Camp, not the other. So, but we'll have our traffic engineering people look at that, and I just wanted to let you know before we put up a stop sign or a yield sign where one has not been for many years. I don't think there was ever one there, that we're looking into that. And I'll take any other questions or the board members might have now.
Any questions, Ms. Perkins?
Thank you for taking care of that issue in the Preston Forest area. I did hear back from the constituent who was concerned that there was still a lot of loose gravel.
It tends to take a little longer on subdivisions because they don't get the amount of traffic. We do the same thing on Mount Tabor Road, and the loose gravel gets
Right.
knocked off a little better, but it will eventually. And that's the same type of surface that was actually used at the original construction of it. It's just, I don't think it's ever been overlaid ever.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, because she said something about the gravel stays all winter on the road where, you put it down for the snow or the ice or
Yeah.
what have you. Of course, and I know there are a lot of very steep areas
yeah,
there.
we do have to put a mix on
she
there.
says
We
there's...
can't sweep that either.
Yeah, she says there's no place for the gravel to go, so, but anyway, she did write back and did say thank you for giving her the note, even though it wasn't what she really wanted, but
Right.
thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Mr. Creed?
Yeah, I just had one thing that road over to Roanoke where we went and looked at, specifically the stop sign. And you said that we had something about the county have not filed whatever they need to move that stop sign from where it's at to where the other road is at. Can you explain what we need to do in order to get that?
Right now, that's a private road. And we're working with the property owner to see if he can make that, well, even then, if right now it's an entrance, or a private road or an entrance, if he has a permit, it would be up to the property owner to put a stop sign there. We would have to take that in as as a subdivision or as a rural addition. The county would have to dedicate that as a public right-of-way, because right now it's just private property. It'd be just like adding a subdivision road.
And the road we're talking about is the one with Radham, when he was laying off over there for his hotels. He came into the backside of it and brought it up and made it a much safer place to get on the road, but we're not legal yet.
Okay, doesn't have a stop sign there.
No, there's no stop sign
Because
It's a
not
private
VDOT road.
It's a private road.
Yes. Nothing that, he can put a stop sign up there. Somebody can put a stop sign up there. We just don't do them on
Okay, what about
private
the other
entrances.
side? Is that other one still a private road too, where the stop sign is at?
It's a private road on VDOT right-of-way.
So
That road used to go down from the top, up the mountain and intersected with North Fork Road before the interstate was built, further towards Elliston on North Fork Road. When the interstate was built, it had to be relocated, so that the VDOT bought a strip of right-of-way to get across that ford and over to North Fork Road, and relocated what was a private road then, made it a private road now, and the agreement back then was we will relocate the road, but it will still be privately maintained. And so when it was relocated, it was a private road before. It never had a route number. It was a private road still.
no stop sign.
I have no idea. I can take it down if you like.
No, I just, if it belongs to the landowner, which I would assume that it does, why wouldn't he be able to just take that one up and put it up at the other place? They're both
If it's a private,
Still both private
if
roads.
it's a private road, he's welcome to put a stop sign up, but I know VDOT can't put one on a private road unless it's in your right-of-way.
Right, but can we use,
I think that was probably,
can we use the one that's already there?
Is that a property matter, Mr. Attorney?
Yeah, whoever owns the sign, which is probably the private owner, right? So you're saying? Yeah.
we may have put the stop sign there just as a courtesy when the road was put in.
I don't know, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to get something straight that's wrong. And I think we're spinning the wheels. We'll take it up at a later time, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? I have one. Did you find out anything on the interstate sign for Roanoke?
I submitted that. No, I haven't found out what they're.
Okay.
I'll ask them again.
All righty. And that's all I've got. If there's no one else, David, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks, David.
The next item on the agenda is Town of Christiansburg Revenue Recovery Program, and Mr. Joe Coyle.
All right. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for allowing me to come tonight and talk a little bit about revenue recovery. I've really kind of got a twofold purpose. I want to describe for you where Christiansburg is in the process and why we're approaching revenue recovery, and also just to kind of give you some background on what revenue recovery is, what it isn't. Revenue recovery can become an emotional issue, and really want to put out the facts up front so people know what it is that we're trying to accomplish. I'd be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to report back to you what your rescue squad is doing. We cover a big part of the county. We were just recently awarded the 2012 Outstanding EMS Agency Award for the region, so we're very proud of our members' hard work to earn that award. So revenue recovery. When we talk about revenue recovery, I'll define that in just a moment. The important philosophy going forward for the town of Christiansburg is that we want to put outcomes before incomes. The goal of any emergency medical services revenue recovery program has to be to enhance patient care. That is at the root and the philosophical basis for doing revenue recovery. The focus has to remain on the patient. The focus can't be on the business aspect or how much money one can earn. So that is the philosophy we're taking as a department. It's the philosophy we're taking to our town council, and the philosophy we're working on going forward. It's outcomes before incomes, meaning simply we want good patient care, and that is the priority, no matter what kind of program we're using. So what is revenue recovery? It is simply the process of obtaining financial reimbursement for the cost of providing medically necessary ambulance transportation. You may hear this called other things, fee-for-service, ambulance billing, rescue squad billing, EMS billing, but it's revenue recovery. And so we're reaching out to already established revenue streams that exist right now and saying, hey, we've provided this service, we want to recoup this revenue, these costs that we've expended. So why would we do it? Well, take you back not too many months ago here in the New River Valley, just like across most of Virginia, local governments were working with tight budgets. We're constantly being asked to do more with less. That's a reality for local government here in the Commonwealth. And one of the things that I want to make sure never happens in the town of Christiansburg is that my governing body has to make a decision about whether they can fund EMS, emergency medical services, that year, or whether they're going to have to cut ambulances or equipment or supplies. I want to make sure that that isn't something that has to be put on the table. The answer to that, quite simply, is revenue recovery. EMS is an expensive proposition. The town and the county both support local EMS and fire very well. We're very fortunate in this part of the Commonwealth to get the level of support we do from both the county government and, in the case of Christiansburg, the town government. But EMS is expensive, and the costs continue to rise. An ambulance that cost a little over $100,000 10 or 15 years ago is bumping $180,000 now. And that doesn't include the equipment that goes in it. And I could go down the laundry list of the equipment. Cardiac monitors, $22,000 to $25,000. The stuff is very expensive. Costs are increasing. In order to be good stewards of taxpayer money, it is incumbent on us to reach out and find other revenue streams that can support emergency medical services. The nationwide statistic is that 5 to 8% of the population will use emergency medical services. 5 to 8%. So it really is good stewardship if we can identify a revenue stream that is attached to those people that are using the service. And that's what revenue recovery for EMS does. It's a user-based fee, but it provides for emergency medical services a constant and dedicated revenue stream, which helps us as governments are preparing their budgets to make sure that we can continue to deliver high-quality care and to continue to enhance the patient care we deliver in this area. JLARC, several years ago, did a study, and they made some recommendations. And they said EMS agencies should actively consider billing patients' health insurance policies for the services and transportation provided. They recognized in the Commonwealth that funding for EMS is an issue in this area, in the entire Commonwealth. And they went on to say that failure to recover that revenue simply leaves unclaimed the health insurance benefits for which most patients have already paid. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So in effect, if Christiansburg didn't reach out and do this, we're leaving money on the table that is already sitting there. If it doesn't affect directly any person, this is money that's already out there. We're simply leaving it on the table every time we run a call and don't engage in this process. The revenue estimates. Until we started interviewing the vendors, we were kind of cautious about giving out any revenue projections because I know that everybody will fix onto whatever number I throw out there. But we seem to be coming back with a pretty constant figure for the town of Christiansburg and our run area alone of between $700,000 to $900,000. So we're not talking a small amount of money. We're talking a substantial contribution to the budget for emergency medical services. So who pays for this revenue recovery? Where is this table that the money is laid? Well, there's 3 primary payers across the country and in the Commonwealth. That's Medicare, private insurance, and Medicaid. So the focus is to reach out and tap into those insurance streams. It's really important as we set our pricing strategy in Christiansburg that we do it in such a manner to minimize the impact on citizens. There are some localities, some agencies that set their ambulance fees really, really high, thinking that they will make more incremental money. But in reality, what happens is you're going to get the 85% that the insurance company pays, and you're not going to get a lot of return from the co-pays. I'll talk a little bit in a moment about our responsibilities under law, but we have to bill. If we bill anybody, we have to bill every single patient that we transport. That is federal law. But what the vendors are saying is that the bulk of your money is going to come in through that initial reimbursement request to the insurance company and not through the co-pays. So our pricing strategy then in Christiansburg will be a low fee, which is slightly above the Medicare reimbursement rates, so that we minimize any impact to local residents from the co-pay. But what about those that don't have insurance? This is near and dear to my heart. I am first and foremost a paramedic. I became a paramedic because I like taking care of people, and that is my philosophy. And so I worry, what happens to people with no insurance? We call these people self-pay, and that is a concern. As I mentioned already, we have a legal requirement. If I go out and bill Mr. Smith, and Mr. Smith has Medicare, and then I go run Mr. Jones, and he's self-pay, and I simply say to Mr. Jones, I'm not going to send you a bill, that's a violation of federal law. I've committed fraud against Medicare, committed fraud against the government. I personally never want to end up on that side of a court case, so we won't do that. We have to bill every person that we transport, regardless of their geographic location, regardless of their status. However, the government has the ability to do compassionate billing, and that is the philosophy that we would embrace in the town of Christiansburg. That means if you don't have insurance, when you get that bill from Christiansburg, you'll call a number and you'll talk to a human being who will say, okay, let's talk about what your abilities are, what your status is. We'll either work out a long-term payment plan, we'll work out some other programs, but we'll work with those people to make sure that the ambulance service doesn't become a hardship to them and we don't violate our responsibility to at least attempt billing those patients. And so we'll have established hardship guidelines all that's very seamless. This is what's done in all the other localities that do billing, that do compassionate billing. There are some localities that do not, and I would never want to take that approach where you are really aggressive with collections. And so there are some localities that, will garnish wages, put people into collections, bad things. That is not a philosophy that we would ever want here in Christiansburg. So compassionate billing is what we would espouse, so that there's no concern to patients that they shouldn't call 911 if they need an ambulance. So how would we use the money in Christiansburg? Well, the first thing, we want to improve patient care. One of the things that we see as a need is for emergency medical dispatch. And the reason that's listed on there, even though that's not a traditional EMS function, emergency medical dispatch helps get the right people to a patient. It helps us send the right equipment. It helps us prioritize calls. It's critically important for a patient, for the dispatcher to be EMD. It's also very expensive. It requires extra dispatchers when your dispatch center becomes emergency medical dispatch certified. So it's an expensive proposition. This is the one of the things on my laundry list, my wish list of uses for the money that would be high on the list. An automated external defibrillator program. Our goal is to really increase survivability of out-of-hospital cardiac arrests. And to do that, we really want to saturate the area with automated external defibrillators. They're not expensive individually, but if you buy them, a lot of them, the price adds up. So this would be some of the things I'd like to see it used for. The other biomedical equipment that I mentioned, the heart monitors, as new advancements come out in emergency medicine, we like to stay in step with that and make sure that our patients are getting really good care. Supplemental advanced life support staffing. If you've read the paper recently, you know that I'm working on some flex time and part-time advanced life support provider positions. And right now in Christiansburg, our membership is actually booming. We actually have increased our roster at the rescue squad phenomenally in the last 12 months. But what we have a need for, and we will always have a need for because of the certification and training requirements, is a constant supply of advanced life support providers, the medics, who are able to do special things when they respond to a call. And so part of this money would be used to provide supplemental staffing. The ongoing support. Training is another one of those increasing costs. In order to get certification in Virginia, you have to take more hours now, and in order to keep your certification at every level, it takes more hours. Those hours cost money to provide the classes. Vehicle replacement, equipment maintenance, replacement, things like that. Very, very expensive in EMS. Some additional service enhancements. Enhancements to our radio system here in the Valley, so that we have better intercommunication, interoperability between agencies. Long term, the town council is interested in establishing at least one satellite station, and that's designed to decrease response times. Over the long term, this money could also be used to help with projects such as satellite station. So I took a look at the region to see how we stacked up and to see whether this was something that would make us kind of out of step with our partners. So I looked to the northeast and some of the bigger localities in the Roanoke City, Roanoke County area. All the localities shaded in green do some form of revenue recovery, whether it's the locality officially does it, or their EMS agencies or their private nonprofit rescue squads do it. But in some form, all of these localities engage in revenue recovery. If we look out to the west, same thing. We find it out towards Wythe, Carroll, Grayson, Galax. And here in the NRB, we also do it. So we realized that in Christiansburg, there was quite the opportunity. We are the outlier of it because we don't do it. And so quite the opportunity. So I thought, why don't we do it in Christiansburg? Why haven't we really considered doing this? And a lot of it has to do with those myths and misperceptions that exist. And what I'm trying to dispel as I talk to people. There's a couple concerns. Number one is there's going to be a negative impact on residents in terms of the copay and the money. We'll talk a little bit about that. The other one is that there will be a negative impact to EMS volunteers or EMS agencies. This is really an emotional response. So I'll take just a second, I'll tell you about one agency's experience. My background, back in the late 90s, up through the early 2000s, I was the chief of an agency, a nonprofit rescue squad, in a locality just to the east of us. And there was a gentleman in my position who was talking about this revenue recovery stuff. And I don't know if Google will take you back to 1999 and 2000, but if you Google my name and that locality, you will find that I opposed revenue recovery vehemently. I thought it was the worst possible thing that could happen to a volunteer agency. And I did everything I could as the chief of that agency and a representative of all those agencies to fight it. And after about a year of this, I really started doing a lot of research, which I should have done at the beginning, and engaged in the logical response and realized this isn't really a bad thing. This is a good thing. But there are some things that you have to take into consideration, some myths that you have to bust, and approaches you have to take. The first two myths are people won't call 911 if they need to, and that everybody's insurance premiums will go up. That's what we thought. If you think about people not calling 911, take the approach of somebody who's having chest pain. They think they're having a heart attack. They're hurting really bad. If we transport them in an ambulance, and these numbers are ballpark because we don't really know what the fees would end up being, but $500 to $600 is the potential ambulance bill for that type of transport, as opposed to a heart catheterization and a CCU stay, which is in the tens of thousands of dollars. I submit that the thing that is the most concerning is that 5-digit bill that's going to come from a healthcare facility that will normally be pursued pretty aggressively. There's been no evidence to support that people don't call 911 because revenue recovery has been instituted. In terms of insurance premiums, if we look at Medicare as kind of our barometer, it's less than 1% of all health-related Medicare costs. It is a tiny, tiny blip on their radar screen. The bulk of their costs are not related to EMS revenue recovery. And again, research across the state, and this is provided by the Virginia Office of EMS, there's no historical data to support the claim that insurance premiums rise. They rise for many reasons, but the research has said the rise is not related to an entity or locality engaging in EMS revenue recovery. It is due to things such as the economy in general, the patient's family size, health status, and age, things like that, not due to EMS revenue recovery. There's concern that volunteer agencies would be impacted because they would lose donations revenue. Again, information from the Office of EMS says this doesn't happen. Our experience, that agency of which I was the chief, it didn't happen. Our donations did not go down. However, based on the amount of revenue that can be generated in this decade, it far exceeds what most agencies would ever dream of getting in donated revenue. So that can always be offset with the revenue that's generated. Loss of volunteer membership is one of the biggest concerns. And from my perspective as a chief back in 1999 and 2000, I was worried that my members would quit, that the agency would fold, and we'd no longer be able to do volunteer emergency medical services. And there was a couple specific refrains that I kept hearing. We can't do this because volunteers don't charge. We don't charge our neighbors to take care of them. Well, the truth of the matter is, the hard truth is that people volunteer, but agencies do not. It is very expensive. At the end of the day, an agency, whether it's local government, a nonprofit, has to pay the water bill, the electric bill, has to pay the fuel for the vehicles, the insurance. The insurance, as you very well know, is very expensive. We have to pay for the vehicles. A myriad of things have to be paid for. It's very expensive. At the end of the day, people can still volunteer. I still volunteer with that agency. I'm still a very active volunteer. And the fact that I've been filling out the forms now for over a decade for revenue recovery there didn't change my status one bit. I'm still very happy and very comfortable being a volunteer there. But the agency is getting its expenses covered. Too much extra work was the other concern. We're already using the program that's required to collect the data for Christiansburg. So it's simply a matter of collecting 2 tiny pieces of information, maybe another minute or 2 of time on each call, and they've collected all the data they need. That's the only impact to the volunteer member. It is minimal. And I'll tell you specifically what it is here in just a second. The big one, though, and this is the one that I have to deal with internally with the agency, and that any locality that would want to start doing this has to deal with this. The perception from volunteer members or agencies that they are trying to be gotten rid of. That's a very real fear. It's an emotional fear. And the reality of it is, if a locality or department or an agency is committed to volunteerism, it's not going to happen. And so we're very fortunate in the New River Valley, and especially in Christiansburg, the town council is very committed to volunteerism. That's not a concern. That's not going to happen. We want to support and continue supporting volunteerism. But that's a big concern that anybody would have to worry about if they were going to be doing revenue recovery. These are some of the reasons volunteers actually leave their agencies. Poor agency leadership, a leadership attitude that if revenue recovery comes in place, that the leader is very derogatory towards it and doesn't explain it well and doesn't take time to work with people, then people would leave the agency. In general, increasing work and family commitments, EMS is increasingly high-tech, so a lot of folks just are not wanting to learn the technologies that are necessary, and as I said before, the time commitment to become and remain certified. The way we have envisioned our program is designed to be minimal impact on the members. We want to make sure there are no scene confrontations. So we're working on a PR campaign. We've been sending out the flyers to utility bills. It's been on our Facebook. We've been doing public information sessions. We want people to know up front what is and isn't the truth, that we're not going to be doing hard billing and sending people into collections. There should be minimal impact, and you should always call 911 if you need to be transported. Our pricing strategy, as I mentioned, is designed to keep the impact from copays at a minimum. And very importantly, a provider that comes to someone's house isn't going to have a clue whether that person has paid bills or not paid bills for EMS revenue recovery. That information is sheltered from the people that are running the calls. They just simply will not have access to that information. So if they go to Mrs. Smith's house and she never pays her bill, and they're not going to know that. It's simply not part of their mix, to avoid that confrontation. So the process, very quick. The items that are starred are the only things that will have to be done different from the perspective of the volunteer EMS provider out in the field. We run the call like we normally do. We obtain the patient's signature. That's one of the differences. We obtain their insurance data, and that can either be done from the patient, or normally we will get it from the hospital. We have good relationships with the hospital, and they'll give us a face sheet that has that information. The call gets posted electronically, just like we do now. The vendor reaches out, grabs that data. They send the bill out to the insurance. The patient will get an explanation of benefits, and then they may or may not have a copay depending on their individual circumstances. So where we are right now, we are in the process of interviewing vendors. It is most appropriate to use a vendor to do revenue recovery because it's a very complex billing system, and there's a lot of laws that you have to be aware of, and if you don't follow those, you end up on the wrong side of the judge, and we certainly don't want to do that. So that's the process we're in right now, is interviewing vendors, hiring a part-time QA coordinator to make sure that the data, when it leaves our system and goes to that vendor, is accurate, and that there are nothing inappropriate or incomplete in those forms, and doing public information sessions, another big component. Once we get to a point we're comfortable with the vendors, then we will work with town council to get them to enact an ordinance to actually enable the program. And that's where we are right now. To finish up, and I do appreciate your tolerating my lengthiness here, some key points. No one will ever be denied treatment or transport based on their ability to pay. That is the key point. If that were not the case, I wouldn't be here trying to advocate this system. Christiansburg is going to use compassionate billing policies to minimize impact to people that are uninsured or underinsured. It is used by hundreds of EMS agencies in Virginia, both volunteer, career, and combination. It is the norm across the state. Just like I showed you that cutout of this part of Virginia, it's the norm across the Commonwealth. And the majority of insurance plans actually already allow for this reimbursement. It's kind of the norm anymore that this will be part of what they pay out. Again, sorry I was so long, but there's some good information. Any questions?
Any questions? No?
Yes, I did have several, but you answered quite a few of them in your presentation. I believe you came from Roanoke County.
Yes, sir.
Did all the rescue squads in Roanoke County participate in revenue recovery?
Yes. It was actually enacted in Roanoke County as an umbrella. So the county did it, and then the agencies joined in under that umbrella. Yeah.
Okay. Question. Between Blacksburg and, well, all the rescue squads have mutual aid agreements.
Yes, sir.
For an example, if all the rescue squad vehicles in Blacksburg were out on calls, and they called Christiansburg for mutual aid call, and they responded, say to downtown Blacksburg, they picked up a patient and they transported that patient to the hospital, would that citizen in Blacksburg be charged?
Yes, they would. The vendor would send a bill to their insurance if they were insured. They would get an explanation of benefits, and if there was a copay, they would get a bill for the copay. Yep.
Okay, reverse it. Blacksburg responds to Christiansburg on a mutual aid call. All of you guys out on some kind of airplane crash or catastrophe or something like that. I'm just using that hypothetical. And Blacksburg picked up a citizen in downtown Christiansburg and transported them, say, to MRH or the regional hospital. Would that citizen be charged?
Not unless they were also doing revenue recovery. No, sir.
Oh, so what I'm saying is that your response area takes in part of Montgomery County.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I can understand inside the town and the town implement, but is it something that gives the Christiansburg Rescue Squad authority to charge county citizens out in the county when they have relatives who maybe live in Blacksburg and says, well, the rescue squad took me and I live on Craigs Creek and they didn't charge me a dime. But you live in Christiansburg out in the county and you got charged $600. How does that work? I mean, just help.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're not unique in it. There are other localities in Virginia where one agency will do it and the others won't. It hinges on the fact that, we have the mutual aid agreement with the county, and so we respond to a large number of calls. We actually cover, the statistics vary from month to month, obviously, but anywhere from 47 to 48% of all calls that are run within the border of Montgomery County are run by Christiansburg Rescue Squad. So we run the lion's share of calls in the county. Basically, if I was to run a call into Blacksburg and I said, I'm not going to charge you because you're in Blacksburg, I'm violating federal law because I'm charging this patient in Christiansburg and they have Medicare, and so now that law attaches to me. So I now have to bill every single person that I transport. So the federal law says that once you start billing, if somebody requests your service or you end up answering a call for service, then you're obligated to submit a bill.
Okay. Does this board have to pass anything or have to support anything for you to be able to respond in the county's area to do these transports or whatever?
We already have a mutual aid agreement, so
Right.
it's already expected that we'll do the responses there. I actually can't answer that question. I'd have to turn to the attorneys to get you an answer on. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to explain, but I think this way. Okay, and let me use this example. The Christiansburg Police work within the town limits. You don't catch them out on Route 8 working radar because they don't have jurisdiction. And I'm trying to Christiansburg Rescue Squad. Yes, it's help funded by the county and the town, but there's county residents that live in the county that doesn't pay town fees such as water bills, town taxes, and things like that. So what I'm saying is that does it take something special for this board to authorize that you charge citizens who live in Montgomery County, not residents of Christiansburg? It's basically what I'm saying.
My understanding is no, but the caveat there is I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is no.
Is that accurate to your understanding as well, Marty? Because it seems like, you have a town ordinance here which would be impacting people outside of the town.
Right. I have not studied the issue, but my gut reaction is I don't know how a town ordinance could go into effect outside the town. Now, there may be something that grants that. I don't know. That's the first question I asked Carol when we first heard about it was, how can you charge someone in the unincorporated area for a fee that's enacted pursuant to a town ordinance?
I think it would be different.
I mean, we can check. I asked his attorney, asked if he had talked to their attorney about it, and he said yes.
It would be different if 100% of our rescue squads participated in the program.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But some, Christiansburg is participating where Blacksburg's not, and I don't know what Charlottesville and the rest of them are doing. So
Adam.
That's the only question I have.
I may be able to offer some.
And I was going to say too, Adam sitting behind you is waving. I think.
Roanoke County provides mutual aid assistance, same type of agreement that we have with our sister agencies in the county, but they provide mutual aid assistance into the eastern part of Montgomery County. They run about 50 calls a year, and they bill those residents, and they have been for years. Since 2000, since about 2001, 2002, they've been doing that since it started.
Well, it seems to me that, and I don't know that this answers your question or not, but it kind of seems to me that all citizens of Montgomery County
are part of Montgomery County, whether they're in Christiansburg or Blacksburg or Shawsville or Reiner or wherever. And they all pay into it's not a kitty, it's into real estate taxes that are taxed by the county. So I can't see where you can break them apart just because there's a fee charged for going out and picking someone up with a EMS, especially when that EMS was called to come. You know, they don't have to call if they don't want service. But if they want service, then whoever's available is going to come and pick them up. So, you know, I don't see how you can separate that.
Another thing to think about is, I mean, you can always bill, but whether that billing is enforceable or not, may be the issue, what we're getting at. Same thing with Roanoke County. They can bill when they come in here, but whether that bill is a valid bill or not.
When you were in Roanoke County, Joe, did you run calls into the city, into Roanoke City?
Yes, we did. And we would have had to submit bills.
Yeah, I was going to. I think it's a valid question that we've got to find the legal answer to, but I just know from a practical standpoint, there's a whole lot of people doing what we're talking about.
I mean, the same thing would apply to, for instance, if we had to turn a call over to Radford EMS, Remsey, and Pulaski, and we say, hey, we need your help, they're going to send a bill notification into their insurance.
So what you're saying is anytime the Christiansburg Rescue Squad goes there to pick somebody up, regardless, they're going to bill that person?
Yes, ma'am.
No matter where they live, no matter what they do?
We have to, because that's federal law.
Right. I want to ask this question. Take a different tack, please.
Sure.
You said that the cost will be a little bit above what Medicare allows.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a ballpark figure.
Adam, was it, what was the percentage? Well, I mean, Medicare allows, it's a sliding scale depending on what's done during the transport and how many miles, but I think like 120% of the Medicare allowable rate is what you charge, and then you end up getting back the bulk of what Medicare will reimburse. They'll only reimburse a certain portion.
But do you have no idea whatsoever? I mean, I know if you're doing hard cap, something, you know, is it going to cost more depending on what you're doing to that patient?
It may, yes, ma'am. There's several levels. There's like just a routine transport with no real interventions.
Okay, what's a routine transport?
Like, for instance, let's say I have, I called because I have sprained my ankle, and I'm really just getting a ride to the hospital, and they don't start an IV, they don't do injections, nothing medically necessary, as opposed to someone who has stopped breathing. And so the medics come, and we're going to give lots of medicines, we're going to put tubes down into their lungs, we're going to do a lot of other interventions, and so Medicare says you charge more for that.
That still's not giving me a...
I don't know the actual numbers, and I apologize if that's what you're asking. I don't know how much that would cost. I
I wanted
apologize.
to know what could our citizens anticipate in terms of cost to them for this service, for this recovery business?
Well, for those that are insured, minimal. And again, I said the primary bill goes to the insurance. The copay is really what's left to go to the citizens. And then government, if that's a hurdle, we have the ability to work with those people.
Would it be $600? Would it be...
For the copays?
Yeah.
Oh, no, ma'am. No, the total bills are probably going to be in that range. So the copays are going to be just a small portion.
15% of $600.
10 to 15, 20, yeah.
Okay, that's still a lot, but let me ask you this. Another question I had, you said they will do compassionate billing. What requirements are out there? How will you know whether a person can afford to pay or not pay?
As part of the program, we would establish financial hardship guidelines. And when those people, for instance, if they don't have insurance, and that's pretty easy to document from their hospital stay, then when they call in and say, hey, I have no insurance, I have no income, I can't pay this bill, What do I do?
Have you established those hardship guidelines?
No, ma'am, because it's too early in the process for that. We have not.
Well, I want to know, how can you prove?
And that would be part of the program as it gets approved by town council. So,
But what procedures do they use in Roanoke to prove that people cannot pay or have no insurance or what have you?
I misunderstood what you were asking. You're asking what documentation would the patient
Yes.
have to provide?
Yes.
I don't have the answer to that question either, and that's something I'll have to get for you. But I know that their vendors make contact with each person, and each situation is reviewed, and then they make a decision how they're going to proceed.
Would you use the same guidelines they have in Medicare, Medicaid, or Medicaid? It would be my guess.
Well, for instance, Medicaid, there's no
guidelines.
there's no, once, that's all you can bill. Once you bill Medicaid, you don't charge any additional.
Do you all have any idea how hard it is for some of our citizens to be able to prove hardship? Do you know what they have to what they would need to go through to prove that?
No, ma'am.
It's tough. I don't care where you go when you're trying to prove hardship to people. But would you ever pursue it in the courts?
No, that's part of our philosophy, is that we would not be doing collections or things like that.
So somebody could just get by with it forever?
We would hope people wouldn't do that.
No, I'm
Are you
saying, but you
lie?
could.
You saying lie to us?
No, I'm not saying lie to you. I'm saying somebody could say, well, we have hardships and we can't pay it, or right now we have other expenses, and you let it go. You would let it go then? Or would you continue to bill that person for 3 years?
No, I think once we've made that contact and it's put in place, then that's,
Right? Suppose you establish a plan. That person's going to pay, and about 3 months into the plan, the person can't pay. What would you do then?
then we'd
Or
reevaluate.
what is done then?
Then we'd reevaluate their situation.
What?
We would reevaluate their situation. Again, this is part of the process we haven't fleshed out because it's too
Well, see,
early.
this bothers me tremendously. I understand, we've talked about it in here ourselves about revenue recovery. I'm also trying to figure out with all the things that you've got to buy, equipment, pay people, all the things you've listed here as expenses. Is it worth it in the long run? I mean, are you looking to make money, or are you just looking to get money to hire a person? I mean, what if you're going to hire a person to do something, but if you've got to go through all these things, is it worth it to you when you collect these funds to do that? I mean, to make money. I mean, why else are you doing it if it's not to gather income?
Well, it is to gather income. This is money that is already in existence and is what we want to use to help fund emergency medical services going into the next 10, 15, 20 years. I think it's good stewardship to use user fees to help fund the
Right.
functions of government.
Okay, so are your user fees going to, you think, produce more income than what it's going to take to equip people to do this and to hire people and to train people and to buy special equipment, et cetera, et cetera?
Actually, normally, and I'm basing this on the experience of the localities around us, it does not. Revenue recovery only will fund about 80 to 85% of a budget at best, and that's just anecdotal information talking to my colleagues around the region. So it doesn't produce a surplus of funds.
Okay, so then what you're saying is this is just a user fee that citizens in Montgomery County would have to pay if you're called out to get that person, and it's not going to produce any more income, but it's going to take, maybe make the tax burden lighter for citizens, that they will not have to, that the government agencies will not have to pay as much for the rescue squads?
Yeah, I mean, going forward, that's a decision our town council has to make in terms of how they utilize that, but that's certainly a possibility.
I mean, is that part of of your driving force? I mean, I don't understand if it's not to produce income and to have somewhat of a surplus, it's to take away
Well,
the,
it's like, for instance, the things that I mentioned in the PowerPoint that we can't do right now. We can't fund EMD. We don't have the money to fund EMD. It's very expensive.
What?
Emergency medical dispatch. We don't have the money to fund that. So those type of things are what this money would be used for. And long term, it is to guarantee that emergency medical services has a dedicated revenue stream.
what about the 911 business we're setting up with the whole county?
I mean, they'll also work towards that, but this is a good source of funding for those type initiatives because it directly benefits emergency medical services.
So that's taking some of the tax burden off of the citizens.
All I can speak to is the fact that we can generate revenue. I can't speak for council and tell you what they would do with taxes. That would be out of
Well,
turn if I tried
I'm
to.
not trying to kill the messenger. I'm just trying to get some idea to understand where it is we're coming from
Sure.
with revenue recovery. I know we have discussed it among
Sure.
ourselves here in public on this board. And so as you were going through it, a lot of questions came to mind, things that we've discussed maybe prior to this, though we haven't done it in a great deal of detail. It seems to me then, as I guess you said, it would be helpful if every rescue squad wanted to do this. But, you know, times change, things change. But I've been in this county since 1962, and rescue squads to me have always been almost sacred. I know my mother has used them, and when she was alive, and a lot of other people. And I do know right now what are the difficulties with trying to prove hardship, with trying to prove to insurance people and others that you don't have the ability to pay. And so, you know, I'm just wondering if the costs and the benefits weigh out. And that's what you look at. So, excuse me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to totally occupy it, but these are things that have really bothered me, and I just would like to have some answers to them. Thank you.
I want to help you right quick.
Sure.
1 penny of the real estate taxes that's taken by this county is allocated to fire and rescue. In this county, we have 5 fire departments and we have 5 rescue squads. Okay. 1 penny, and I'm the liaison from this board to the Fire and Rescue Commission. When you sit with the rescue captains and fire chiefs and things, and you have 1 penny, and you look at the equipment that's out there in this county, and they talk about buying fire trucks, ambulances and things, that 1 penny doesn't go very far.
Yes, sir, that-
And I have to commend you on your presentation, and I want to commend the Fire and Rescue Commission on the cooperation that they have with each other. Because sometimes an ambulance over here needs to be replaced, and that captain will say, you need it worse than I do, we'll replace it next year, you take that money. The whole thing, when it comes to this board here, if we're allocating 1 penny now, and the way the cost and things going, if we don't look for another stream of revenue, what do? Allocate 2 pennies? And so forth to replace all of that. I understand what he's saying. I've asked him questions. I've seen the presentation before. He's tweaked it a little bit, some, but he answered a lot of my questions. I had about 10 questions on here, and I happened to read Sunday's Roanoke Times with the situation in Saltville, where they was using for a money-making thing, people who could walk. The FBI was watching. They'd walk out, get on the gurney, and they transport them and build Medicare. If you look at the front page of Sunday's paper, you'll see where I think they make about $800,000 or something. Several of them was indicted in person. But I know you guys, y'all wouldn't do anything like that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And I want to commend you for your research, your presentation. Some of the people might have some other questions, but good.
And Ms. Perkins, we'll get that information for you.
Sir?
You asked some very good questions, so we'll try to get that information for you that I didn't have.
I'm just, you know, as somebody who's new to this and have no contact or had no experience with anything like this, it just interest, I need to know some of those questions that are asked. And I do appreciate, like I say, I'm not killing the messenger. I'm just trying to see in my own mind where we're coming from. So thank you. I do appreciate it and appreciate your very good and direct presentation. But thank you. But I do need questions answered.
Mr. Tuck.
A couple of things. One, have you had a meeting with your volunteers and talked about this issue, and how do your volunteers at the Christiansburg Rescue Squad feel about it? Because I understand other localities or rescue squads have voted on this issue and did not want to go forward. Yeah. Tell me about your process and how you're going about it.
Well, I mean, we've met with the membership, talked to them about what revenue recovery is, and most importantly, what it's not. Talked about these myths. There are some who are not happy with it. I have to be entirely truthful and say there's a handful who really don't want to see this happen. And for most of them, it's we can't charge our neighbors. It's not what we do. And so that's kind of a concern. But the bulk of the membership is okay with this. There's not any pushback to not have this happen. And they recognize that there is a need for some of the things that this will help fund.
When you're saying bulk, you're just saying 80-20, 90-10, 95-5? Or
I would give it 95-5 is probably better, yeah.
Okay. And a question for Marty, and I guess as far as our locality, I understand the town of Christiansburg can say that this building is going to take place, but we do provide funding for the Christiansburg Rescue Squad. Would they not have to come to us to say, all right, we're going to bill people in the county? It seems counterintuitive to what I know about the law that the town should not be able to, or the rescue squad be able to bill out into the county without at least coming to us and asking for our input, I would guess. But
I'll check on that. It's counterintuitive to what I know as well, where the town's jurisdiction is limited to within the town corporate boundaries. The county's jurisdiction is countywide in some instances, and sometimes it's limited to the unincorporated areas. Like we can't enact zoning ordinances or those things in the two towns. However, we can do other ordinances that apply town and county-wide. So, but I'll check and get back with you on that.
And the last question I have is, I understand that the other localities have voted, or rescue squads have voted against it. And have you any concerns that the mutual aid agreements will deteriorate as a result of this?
No.
Okay, and you have assurances from those rescue squads that they're going to still provide mutual aid?
Yeah, actually, in the last 12 months, the need for that has really diminished. We very rarely call on other providers for mutual aid. Normally, we will be providing it to other agencies. But volunteers are very strong community supporters, very patient-focused. I do not think that's going to be an issue. I don't think they're going to say, we're not going to help you out now because you charge for services. I can't see any of them saying something like that.
Well, I guess if you're coming over into their jurisdiction and billing their citizens in their jurisdiction, that's what
Sure, that's a good question. Okay. Well, for instance, the comparison, Roanoke County is currently doing that same thing in the Shawsville area, and that's not an issue. And that's one of the areas that we help provide mutual aid support to. I can't imagine they would view us any different than Roanoke County coming in from the other side and providing that same support. It's about taking care of the patient. So.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Oh, I was going to ask you a question, but it's more a business plan question.
Sure.
When you were going through this and planning out how you were going to do it, and you said that you had to interview vendors and hire a vendor, and you had to hire a part-time QA coordinator, are you looking then to pay for that? That would be covered out of what you were making. It's not going to be an additional cost. I guess the vendors, I guess they would be trying to, when you hire them, they're going to be trying to make their profit back.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Anyone else?
One final question. Can you just give me a rough sense of your timeline? Your timeline on this?
We don't know yet. We're hoping to finish up the next two set of vendor interviews in the very near future. And from that point, the business end kind of falls to Mr. Carpenetti behind me to kind of guide through town council. But there's some other things we have to put in place. We have to get a national provider ID number to allow us to bill Medicare and Medicaid. And we're well into that process. So Adam, estimate on time frame at this point?
Right now, we're looking probably still some months off. As Joe mentioned, we're finishing up some interviews with a few of our vendors. Then our town council will actually still need to adopt an ordinance. I expect that to probably happen anytime in the, hopefully maybe the next 2 months, because once we whittle down and select our vendor, we'll end up going through the contract negotiations with them, filling out, I guess, a lot of the policies and ironing out a lot of those details before going to council. We wanted to wait to go to council until we had pretty much all the, T's crossed, I's dotted, that sort of thing. So we could give them one full package all at once, so it's not, a little bit here and a little bit there. So.
Okay. Making sure we have those answers.
That it? Thank you very much, Mr. Coyle.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you very much. Sorry for taking so much of your time.
It's a great presentation, guys.
No, I think it's
Very good.
important.
And these guys have been before the Fire and Rescue Commission as well, and literally got put to the fire, and they're doing a very thorough job of investigating this, and
Sure.
best of luck.
All right, the next item on the agenda is public address.
Oops.
We have nobody signed up for this public address, but if there's anybody in the audience who would like and come to speak, please step forward and state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes. Hello, Jack.
Hello, Mr. Knittis. How are you this evening? Members of the board, how are you? I'm Jack Selkovitz. I live down on High Rock Hill Road in Pilot, Virginia. One item on the agenda tonight, which tweaked me, is you're going to be discussing the supplemental appropriations under new business for the Montgomery County School Board with the carryover funding. And back in July, I do believe it was Mr. Tuck that offered supplemental funding to the school board for buses over and above their budget. What I would like to see as a taxpayer, and probably a lot of other taxpayers would like to see, that you rescind that extra money in lieu of the carryover funds and allow the carryover funds to purchase the school buses, make up whatever difference there might be. If the carryover funds can cover that school bus purchase, then monies can go back into the county coffers, help pay for fire and rescue. Maybe the sheriff's office might use it for the fuel for their vehicles because they're paying a high fee too, and plus all the other county vehicles. I would not like to see the school budget increased more than the 70% we're already giving them, which is the lion's share of the entire budget. So please consider rescinding your prior excess request. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience like to speak to the board? Seeing no one, we'll close this public address. The next item is addendums, and I don't believe we have one. The next item is consent agenda. Do I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chair.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Chair Willis?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Now we'll move into old business. And subject A, an ordinance amending Chapter 1 entitled General Provisions of the Code of Montgomery, Virginia, by adding Section 1-9, allowing for reimbursement for expenses incurred by the county for methamphetamine lab cleanup. Do I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chair.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair Willis?
Aye.
7 ayes.
The next item is new business, and that's a supplemental appropriation for Montgomery County Public Schools, FY12 carryover. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I would like to discuss this matter just a little bit.
Okay.
As far as, and I know that there's a school of thought that you want an agency to have carryover funds. You don't want them buying a bunch of paper at the end of the time period. I understand that, I get that, but in regards to what they're utilizing some of the funds, and I know that we're not supposed to micromanage the school board, but when I see the purchase, and I know that I've made the argument about the furniture at the courthouse, but I just think that this is the wrong time, and when you've got teachers who are not getting, or positions not being filled, I think it's the wrong time in regards to when, you got kids who are going a half mile to a school stop. I think that to be buying new furniture. I am more than happy to work with them. We've got some surplus furniture at that courthouse, and I'll let some of that go towards them and try to help them out. But I just think at this point in time of spending that, I understand that the school board's going to save money by moving into Building C. I understand that they're going to be able to shut down the Shawsville School where they've got their housing workers down there. But that's just my feeling and why I've got some misgivings, and I just don't believe that I can support this appropriation.
Is this the appropriation that was for $660,000?
This is our leftover.
I mean, it ain't been long since we had one that was for that.
No, I think the one you may be referring to was it 750,000?
It was 750.
That was from the one-time money to cover buses and technology and roofs.
This is just for...
This is
roof repair.
Yeah, this is related to their carryover funds from the operating
I know
budget.
that I read at one time on something that I got saying that they had $660,000 that they was going to use for furniture.
Not that
That number's not ringing.
I don't remember that at all.
That number's not ringing a bell, but I don't. Is that
How much is this one?
431?
258, 956.
Well, the totals.
That's what they're gonna
Yeah, the total
spend.
appropriation is $431,000.
But it's broken down into three different things. As you can see, it's $72,100 for the pay to play not funded in the budget, $100,000 for the technology to put in to Building C, and then the furniture and moving expenses they have listed as $258,956, bringing the total to your $431,056.
And Craig, if I'm correct, it's the technology is the wiring. It was not designed at the time that to be able to have internet and those type things that they are going to need to be able to have next door.
When we remodeled Building C for the school's use, we did not pull cabling all over the building because we didn't know where they would need all the cabling and infrastructure. So when they move into the building, that's to cover all the expenses related to getting their systems up and running within the building.
Any other comments? We had a motion and second, right?
Right.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Nay.
Chair Paulettis?
Aye.
6 ayes, 1 nay.
Okay, the next item is a resolution authorizing the conveyance of lots 5A and 5B in the Falling Branch Corporate Park by the EDA to Trio Properties LLC, AeroPro Corporation, and certain related matters. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded.
Discussion, please.
So,
Discussion.
Yes. And I guess what I don't understand quite there is the wording of it, resolution authorizing the conveyance of Lot 5A and 5B in the Fallen Branch Corporate Park to the Economic Development Authority to Trio Properties. Now, it says nothing as far as the public looking at that as to what Trio Properties has to do in order to make that a viable project. And therein is something that it needs to be known
Okay.
what it's used for.
You,
If you look at the resolution, Basically, the purpose of this resolution is back in 1996, this board first obtained the property over Roanoke Branch. They conveyed that property to the EDA to market and sell to big businesses like Airco and all there. However, they put a provision in there that said the board had to okay all sales. And they also put a provision in there that said the property is no longer used as a for economic development, then it would revert back to the county. And so that puts somewhat of a cloud on title when we sell the property. And so the purpose of this resolution is to do a couple things. One, it says this board publicly supports and approves the sale by the EDA to AeroPro, which is the lots 5A and 5B. Now, AeroPro created Trio Properties as I'd call a land holding company. It's made up of there are three principal owners of AeroPro, made up Trio Properties, and they will own lot 5A and 5B for the purpose of building the AeroPro headquarters and manufacturing facility. There are both real estate agreements and performance agreements that are referenced in this resolution where Trio is buying it subject to those requirements. And one of the requirements, Trio that building has to be built there for AeroPro, and AeroPro's got to move in there and be their headquarters, and it's got to be their manufacturing facility. The building has to be to a certain investment, and then in order to get any of the incentives from the EDA, AeroPro's got to meet the incentive requirements of employees and investment. And Trio is part of those agreements as well. So Trio and AeroPro are parties to the performance agreements and the real estate agreements. And so they're on the hook just as much as AeroPro. And we look at Trio as AeroPro, even though they're a separate legal entity.
And it also says what has to happen to it if they don't perform?
Yeah, if they don't, let's say we sell it to Trio and they never build a building, we can claim it back or claw back the property at no cost to the county.
And how long is that before we can do that?
I think they get about 1 year, 6 months.
6 months to get
to get started. Go ahead.
Get a building permit.
It's a short amount of time.
6 months to get their building permit and their site plan approval, and then the clawback occurs in the performance
And
agreement.
then once you get those permits, they have to actually have it constructed.
They have 1 year to then construct the building.
And then after that, all those reversions go away
I
to
just think
avoid
it's,
their own title problems.
I'm not disagreeing with it.
No, you just want clarity.
I think this, that the public or the citizens of Montgomery County need to know
Absolutely.
that we're not just sitting here giving away
Yes.
2 lots over in the farm park.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Right. Any other questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Chair Lettuce?
Aye.
6 ayes.
All right. The next item is going into work session. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Whatever it is.
Say aye.
Going into work session.
Work session.
Work session.
Aye.
I figured it was work session, so
You don't have a lot to raise yet.
All right, in our work session, our first item is the new courthouse update. Thank you. And Jack Murphy from Thompson and Litton will deliver the message.
How are you?
It's in there somewhere.
Let's see. I think that's it.
six, this is new courthouse. Whoops. Okay, well, I got 2 of them. Don't need 2, but. Next one.
Good to see you all again. I think it's been since early last spring that I got to speak to everyone. Happy to be here again tonight to give you an update on the courthouse project, where things are overall, and primarily give you a summary of where we are with the remaining schedule and an analysis and overview of the project budget. So, without further ado, here's really the main reason why I'm here today. That this is the actual certificate of occupancy that we just received on September 5th, last week. This is what we've all been working toward feverishly here, and I have to mention both Ronnie Raquami and Steve Phillips and their great assistance in helping the contractor, working with the town to iron out any last minute issues to actually secure this for the general contractor, basically. So we do have this in hand now. It's a milestone event. It's been a long time coming, as you all know, but what this means is that the building as constructed, the project as a whole, meets the requirements of the specifications, project specifications, all the life safety requirements, the building code, fire marshal, the stipulations of the non-conditional use permit with the town. All those things have been satisfied. Now, of course, there's still work that's going on now before the court can be totally occupied, but this allows some of that additional work to actually take place. So very pleased with that overall. So right now, I just want to give you a little bit of a quick tour of the project, where we stand right now. The image you see before you is a rendering that we presented to the board. I believe it was in spring of 2009, and again in May. It was at that time that the board approved us moving forward with the project. And happy to say that we pretty much have the same project there. So not a whole lot has changed. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges throughout the projects and unforeseen issues, but a lot of change of staff as well. But very pleased with it, with the end product so far, and looking forward to getting everyone into the new courthouse. Just a few pictures here to share with you and the audience. I believe everyone's had an opportunity to get through the courthouse at various times and various size groups in the last 6 weeks, maybe, I guess. Still tweaking things, still finalizing some of the AV and furniture items and some other assorted changes. Mr. Tuck, please interrupt as I go along too if there are questions.
That's okay. When you said furniture, I just started laughing.
Still working on that. But no, if you have questions or a picture catches your attention, I don't address it, please interject, and I'll be happy to address it.
You mentioned questions. I did have one. In regards to the circuit court, at one point in time, it looked like that you were going to have jurors having individual screens instead of one drop-down screen or two drop-down screens. Is that still the plan as far as the courthouse, as far as having a digital display type thing?
Well, it's a combination of things. It's been upfit to allow for several possibilities. One would be a side display similar to this with the flat screens. It's smaller settings so that they would work better, but also it's outfitted to allow for small monitors at the jurors area where they'd be shared between jurors along that side, and that would be procured independently by the county.
So that would be in addition to the numbers that we see here?
I believe they are accounted for in these figures that you'll see. Don't get too far ahead.
Sorry.
Okay. The views here obviously are the front of the building. The lower left-hand corner there, you see a peak looking down Pepper Street. The front plaza looking up Main Street, you can see some of the improvements to the sidewalks there in keeping with the town's sidewalk and landscaping requirements, and you get a good flavor of the building as a whole. You can also notice on the lower right-hand corner, let's see if I can get a pointer here. There we are. This area here, you'll see some photos. This is where the small garden roof area is that we talked about early in the design of the project. And there it is on your left. The garden roof area is on both sides of the front of the building, over top of the front entry to the building. And then the view to the right is the view looking down Pepper Street towards the town of Christiansburg building. And you can see the covered walkway along the length of Pepper Street, in addition to sidewalks there that extend from the new parking deck to the front and main, and presumably the only entrance into the new courthouse. This is the new parking deck. We have 135 parking spaces. 65, I believe, are in the lower level, which are in secure parking for courthouse staff, judges, and potential jurors. The upper level is accessible from the existing jail parking lot right now, and that's open for public parking related to the courthouse and jail building. Lower left-hand corner is the stairwell, which would allow circulation from the upper level down to the covered walkway, and you can see that across the front in the lower right-hand corner there. Where you come down this stair and then proceed under the covered area along the courthouse. In the foreground here is what we've referred to as a triangle parking lot for a number of reasons, but basically it roughly has that shape. We were able to abate that site. There were some challenges along the way, but end product now, I think you have a nice parking lot providing an additional 46 spaces and 9 or 10 handicap spaces. A few shots inside the building. This is a typical courtroom on the 4th floor, circuit courtroom. Circuit courts are the only ones that have juries. You see the jury seating there in front of the courtroom. And in general, just the appointments within the courtroom itself. This is some of the typical public hallways, corridors, waiting areas, and the typical entrance into one of the courtrooms. All the courtrooms on each floor have a similar entry such as this. Again, some of the public areas, upper left-hand corner is from the main lobby looking towards the elevator bank. The right-hand side is a view from behind the security desk. You can see how the control of patrons into the courthouse will come through metal detectors, past the security desk where x-ray machines will be, which are not in this photo. And you can see some of the security monitors there above the desk. And then the lower center picture is the jury assembly room, which is located on the 4th floor also. I'll review with you some of the remaining schedule high points. As I said, there's a lot of work going on right now. The county has staff in there working on some of the phone systems. We're doing some changes to accommodate phone systems, some of the last-minute changes for court work. But overall, we have a plan that's been mapped out here now probably since the middle of the summer, which really evolved around what you see at the state Supreme Court. And we met with Harry Skeens, the state's representative, technology representative. He's the only individual that sets up courthouses across the Commonwealth. And Harry agreed to this time frame in the beginning of July. So all the other pieces have come into place around that schedule. So you see that the other two contracts, the AVIT contract, that is essentially complete now. We're doing some final tweaking on the security systems, and then primarily what's remaining is training of the staff, and that's being scheduled to occur in the next 2 weeks. The FF&E contract, it's 98% in place. They're still working in the building, assembling some of the more labor-intensive components to the project, and that everything's shaping up real well with that. The general contractor, De Beers, project completion date is scheduled for 30 days from the date of substantial completion. That would be the 17th. And then, as outlined, Harry Skeens will be here on the 24th. He's pretty much going to work around the clock and over the weekends and holidays to make this happen. With the 24th being his first day in the new courthouse, setting up workstations primarily for the circuit court clerk. That same week, the records will begin to be moved into the new courthouse through an independent moving company. But the clerk herself will shut down the end of that week, and then the actual move will take place over the weekend, such that the clerk's office can be up and running on Monday morning, October 1st. May not be at 100%, may only be 1 or 2 teller windows, but her entire staff will be in the new courthouse on that day. There'll be limited security provided at the main entrance too, but there will not be any other access through the rest of the courthouse. It'll be restricted to the first floor of the building. The plan is then to move into the other 2 courts, the General District Court and the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court. They hope that that will move along rather quickly, and the time frame is to hopefully have them in the building, and probably the weekend of October 7th, 6th and 7th. October 8th is Columbus Day, a holiday. The courthouse will be closed that day, but the clerks will be up and running, and so will all the courts. So court will not be interrupted the week of the 24th or October 1st. It will continue to operate in the existing courthouse. And then October 9th is when the full courthouse is in full operations. Excuse me. I did have an opportunity to speak with Judge Turk today, and he did confirm this November 7th date was tentative, but he confirmed with me today that he was able to confirm, make sure I get her name right, the Honorable Cynthia Kinzer, the Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court of Virginia, will be here and serve as the keynote speaker for the dedication. So that is a Wednesday, 10 a.m., so mark your calendars. This might be breaking news here. But he asked me to pass that along to the board. So he's very pleased that she committed to being here for that momentous occasion. All right. This is the good news as far as I'm concerned, and one that I'm happy to have the opportunity to present to everybody. I know over the last 6 months to a year, there's been a lot of, I think, misinformation going around. Some of it has been just due to the other projects that the county's been undertaking with the schools and things like that. But I am happy to report that this project, through the help of virtually everybody up here in the room and those who aren't here today, have really helped keep this project in line. There have been many challenges, but overall, based on the approved budget from May 2009, which was a $30,235,000 project budget for the entire project, as of Friday or Thursday last week, all my numbers were updated with the county input. So we currently stand under budget at a little bit over $4 million. So there's still a little more to be done. My goal is that we can wrap this up at that close to $4 million mark here. So I'm very happy to be able to present that today. Make sure everybody understands that the public is aware of this, and these are the quote official numbers that we've been keeping and working with. Carol has been very helpful in providing some of the other costs that have been that the county has had to take on themselves. But the format here is included in your package, and it's been a little difficult to keep it apples and apples because it's based on the original budget format. But really, the bottom line is that it would come down at that $4 million under budget right now. So there's been a lot of discussion also about the courthouse and the level of detail and questioning some of the finishes and whether or not this project has gone a little over the top. But I would like to address that too. And what you see before you is a table that was put together by R.S. Means, who's a recognized industry leader in construction cost data internationally. Been in business for 70+ years. And on an annual basis, they summarize costs for all construction types, both public and private sector. So this is the public sector from 2011. 2012 data is not available yet, but it shows you across the board, with the high being about $269 a square foot in New York City, all the way down to North Carolina at $154 a square foot. This is construction cost only. It does not include FF&E, does not include fees, land development, and site costs. So if we were to take that previous budget that I shared with you and I remove those items, I come up with a cost per square foot of roughly $165 a square foot construction costs. So these could be compared apples to apples. So I think hopefully that puts those rumors to rest, that you can see we're on the lower end of the construction costs across the country. Obviously, we're not in New York City here, but I do think that we've been good stewards of the county's funds, and we have a good, efficient building that should provide for the county for at least next 25 to 30 years overall. So that's the end of my formal presentation. If there are any other questions you'd like me to go back to anything, I'd be happy to do that.
Any questions?
I've got one. There's a lot of, you used to talk about rumors and the cost of the tunnel, that link between the jail and the courthouse. Roughly, do you have an idea of what that ended up costing approximately? Not to the dollar, not to the $10 or even the $1,000, but ballpark.
I believe the tunnel and the jail addition that goes with it, that creates that secure connection between the two, was under $300,000.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, and I might say that's probably the best part of the whole thing. I mean, they're in there, they can't get out. When they turn loose over in the jail, they go straight underground and they come up when it's time to breathe.
And it's not just for them in regards to, it's officer security, because you don't know who is going to be walking between that courthouse every morning when they're doing that. The officers are at risk that somebody could just walk up with a gun, and so that's the tunnel was very important. But there was a rumor around the courthouse that tunnel was running about $6 million alone, and I kept saying, "There's no way."
Well, I heard someone told me $1 million. I was like, no, but I hadn't heard say. Another added benefit that we were not aware of when we were designing it is how helpful this is being for the move.
Yeah, it's we can have we could have a tropical storm come through around move time, and we can still move because it's all going.
Because the connection's been made into the records room, which has been secure up until this point, up to the move, that it's going to allow all the records to be part, and the cost savings for that, we're not packing it into a truck and bringing it next door. So that it has really been instrumental, and it will be for the move itself. It'll also provide that connection for the public safety building and the sheriff's staff between the jail and the courthouse without actually leaving the buildings.
There has been something that I thought we should have and we haven't had, and that is there should be a day specified out before this thing gets going big time, to where any members of Montgomery County, who are the ones who pay for it, by the way, could go through there and be able to take some kind of a tour to see at least one floor of it, or maybe get rid of the myth that we've got some 50-foot trees there on the front somewhere that's going to grow. And some of the things, just the little things, I don't say everybody needs to go to the 4th floor, but maybe the first 2 floors, and have some kind of a little thing to where that anybody that's interested in that thing should be able to go, seems to me.
I have not talked to Judge Turk about this, and I don't know exactly, and maybe you had a conversation as far as with the ribbon cutting on November the 7th. Are they planning to have like an open house after that? Steve, have you heard anything?
Ruth has been involved with that.
Is that you, Ruth? Okay.
Some of the plans regarding the open house.
Yes. Yeah, one of the things I wanted to make clear is we were able to give the board members a tour earlier on, but one of the key focuses, and Jack mentioned that with the second slide, was to get this thing finished and get the certificate of occupancy issued. So we've limited access to the building since that time to make sure everything's done. I feel sure once everybody's in, that there'll be some sort of open house to allow folks to be able to go through and see things, because that's a good point.
Anybody else?
Just good job,
Yeah.
especially that good news. And you look like you're really pleased, and you should be.
I'm very happy and proud, but obviously there's a lot of people who contributed to that, but I'm glad to have this opportunity to inform you all of that and publicly state where things actually do stand. If there are questions, I'd be happy to address
The
them.
rumor mill always grinds
amazing.
very slowly.
Well, my only other comment is this is my 17th year on the Board of Supervisors, and my very first year on the board, when our board was located in the old courthouse, I was told that we weren't supposed to be there, and that we were supposed to have our own building, and there's supposed to be a new courthouse and all. And just think that was 16 years ago. So things work slow, but they get done.
Right.
Well, when I started on this project, my hair was much a different color. I just leave it at that.
Mr. Brown?
Jack, one comment. I remember the old courthouse with the eagle on it as a young police officer from Blacksburg with Judge Jordan in there. And anytime the rescue squad would go through town, everything would have to cease because there was so much noise echoing out the building. And in July, you couldn't stand it. They didn't have no air conditioning and no nothing. I mean, you'd be sitting up on the jury stand sweating, and the judge would be sweating too.
Well,
But when you looked at this courthouse, the one that we're moving from, I mean, the one before that one and this one, you know, I hope our citizens understand, because I guess I've explained, and probably these board members have explained to hundreds of citizens why we're building a new courthouse. They think it's a waste of money and so forth. So wasn't nothing wrong with the one we moved out of, but you start talking to them about the security issues and the stuff that happened at 9/11, which sort of promoted all of this. And after being in that tunnel from the jail over, you know, it's almost like, well, I hope nothing bad will happen because there's nowhere to escape to. But you guys have done a remarkable job, and we hope, what I tell people, that courthouse will serve maybe 75 years and beyond the way it is constructed. And the numbers that you say, that $4 million was, that's super news.
Icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We
I
appreciate
say
it.
thank you too. It's a great project, and I think the citizens should be happy that we came in $4 million underneath what we originally anticipated. So thank you so much, and thanks for the update.
Okay, look forward to seeing you on the 7th.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Have a good night.
The next item is a presentation on the public safety building, and Randy Vaughn from Wiley and Wilson will give the presentation.
Well, we'll just as we finish up one building, we get ready to tear up another one, right?
That's right. Let's see if we can get this slideshow working here.
Hope he can save us $4 million. This one's been a challenge. It's over to the far left. There you go. There you go.
Good evening. Thank you all for inviting me to come down here and talk to you about the next phase of your capital improvements here. My name is Randy Vaughn. I'm a Vice President with Wiley Wilson and have been the project lead from our company. And what I'm here to talk to you about tonight is our work that we've been doing on the public safety building, which we'll start with this photograph. It looks pretty familiar with you. Hopefully, this is one that Thompson Linton was good enough to share with us. It's a fairly recent photograph of the new court building, and to the right, of course, you can see the existing court building, or the old courthouse. And by April of 2014, we hope that it's going to look something pretty much like this. We have been working on this project for about a year now. We've had a lot of input from the sheriff and his staff, his command staff, from the new regional authority, new emergency communication authority. We've also been working very closely with the county staff, the engineering department, the facilities group, as well as the IT group to get all of their input. And what you're going to see here is a result of everyone's input and thoughts on what this building can be. What I'm showing here is a little bit more of a close-up of the rendering as you would be standing kind of down by the town hall across from the new court facility, and looking back up, and what you see obviously looks very different than what you've got right now. And this is really a complete reskinning of the entire building. So it will, you might be asking to yourselves, why are we taking all the skin off of this building? Well, it's is in the process of failing on you. It's got a lot of wear and tear on it. The brickwork is being held up by steel that's embedded in concrete. There's a lot of moisture has been taken on in that masonry over the years, and it's really starting to show signs, but in the next few years, it's really going to start showing signs of deteriorating.
The bricks are still falling off.
Mm-hmm. The bricks are still falling off, yes. And if you all of that sloped surface that you see there, go back for just a second here. All the sloped surface that you see under these windows here, if I can find it, is being held up. That's all being held by steel that's embedded in concrete. And over the years, that water starts to migrate down into that brick and starting to erode that steel. And when steel gets wet and starts to rust, it does what we call bloom. It starts to expand, and that's starting to pop some of the brick off. If you look up at some of those overhangs, you'll actually see some of that brick, that steel is starting to come through the brick. So we feel like it would be a very not a very good thing to try to spend a lot of money upfitting this building inside without addressing the skin. So what you're seeing here is some of the other benefits of redoing the skin is that it would also be a much more energy efficient building. This building was built back in the 1970s when energy was still cheap. It was probably planned before the 1970 oil embargo and those types of things. So it's not very energy efficient. And also, by reskinning the building, we are actually going to gain about 2,000 square feet of area over the building, because everywhere you see those windows that push back into the building are actually pushed back beyond the floor plates. And by redoing the skin, we're able to pull that out and gain about 2,000 square feet of floor area throughout the building on each floor, about a foot around the perimeter on each floor. What you're seeing here is the basic material. It will be a brick veneer on the outside. We propose to use the same brick, or pretty close to the same brick that's just been used on the new courts facility. And the upper part of it there is actually a insulated metal panel system that kind of gives you that look of that cast stone that was on the new courthouse, without actually being the cost and the weight of that cast stone material. And of course, all the windows will be replaced with energy efficient window systems.
I noticed,
yes,
from the artist's renderings, it looks like the windows will actually be able to be open.
No, these are not. I think what you're seeing there on the top floor is actually those are actually shading devices to help cut down on some of the harsh early morning and late afternoon sunlight.
Okay, I was just looking on page 5.
Right, I think what you're seeing is up here on the top.
Are you taking questions as we go, or?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought he was.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have said, please, let's keep it informal and ask questions as you go.
Because I'd had a couple, I wrote them down, but.
I'm sorry, yeah. Or we can take them at the end, but if you'd like to ask them as we go, that's certainly fine too.
And I guess the first obvious question that, when I seen the rendering of it, is I assume that the basement entrance is going to be done away with on that?
Yes, we'll get into that in just a second, but the basement entrance, that stair that goes down inside the jail now will be taken out. Actually, the other side on Main Street is where that ramp is now, is actually enclosed in this sort of this protrusion that you see out here on the Main Street side. That ramp will stay there, but it'll be all enclosed, and there'll be a door at the end of it. So it can be a sort of secondary entrance for the folks that are on that lower floor.
And the second, this is in form of a question, what is being done to increase the life of the skin that is going on the new building?
This building, the new skin will be, it'll be incorporating all the recent current technology. So it'll actually have, it's a rain skin, what we call a rain skin technology. So what you're looking at here is a brick veneer that'll go over the metal stud backup, very similar to the new courthouse. And there's actually a drainage cavity, a 2-inch space in there that allows water that gets through the brick to drain and get down. So you won't be trapping water inside that wall system any longer.
And the life of this is supposed to be what?
This should be a 50-year building at least, if not longer.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, let's see. Also, another thing we had that is a nice benefit or an added benefit of taking the skin off is that there will be a lot of structural reinforcing that needs to be done to the building. The building was built back in an older period before we had seismic codes. We also are changing the use of the building to a public safety building, which carries a higher requirement for reinforcing. So there'll be a lot of lateral, the basic floor structures and the basic load-bearing capabilities of the building are quite fine as they are, but the ability for it to take lateral moving or wind that you would get from a seismic event or high wind events is just not in the frame right now. And so by having that skin off, that allow us to put that bracing around the outside perimeter of the building rather than having it in the middle of the building where it would obstruct the usefulness of the floor plate. What you see here would be the corner from Main and Franklin. As you can see, this is we went for a little bit more of a contemporary feel to the building to try to. It is no longer going to be a courthouse. We're trying to de-emphasize the view or the importance of it from the green or the square in front, and pull more of an emphasis towards the Main Street side. This structure you see out front here is a covered canopy that'll have a new set of stairs that will bring you up from the street level, the Main Street level, to the front door, which will remain pretty much where the front door to the building is now. I'll show you the plans here in just a second to show you how that works. The side here, this sort of, I call it pilaster and sort of a pediment across the top here is intended to kind of help break up the boxiness of the building now. It's pretty much a cube as you've seen it. So between the canopy and this treatment here on the side, which also will act as air shafts or spaces to bring the ductwork down to the building, so we're not, again, using that space in the floor area to kind of give that a little bit more of a breaking up of the box look there. The other material you see here is the glass curtain wall that goes around from the front entrance around the corner and then down the sides here.
One of the things we'll be doing in the front of the building too, and this former Supervisor Mars mentioned this a couple of times. He was concerned about how the front was really getting overgrown. We've got a lot of trees, and if you're coming down Main Street, it's really hard to see the front of the building. With a lot of that's going to be cleared out and appropriate new plantings put back in, so it'll open the view of the building up quite a bit too.
Right.
And
Yes, sir.
You know, this rendering, if you look at the top left, it sure looks like those windows are cranked open.
you know, it's a shade thing.
It does look like
I know
that.
what it is.
Yeah, the first time we looked at it, we had quite a discussion about, well, what is that? But it's actually a shade thing for lighting, and it's also an energy efficient thing to cut down on some of the solar gain.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just had a question about the roof. It's flat on the top.
Yes.
How is that going to work with to get the rain off?
Well, the roof that's up there now has very poor drainage to
Right.
it. We're stripping the roof all the way back down to the concrete slab, and then we are tapering the insulation to create a proper slope. The code requires us to have a 1/4 inch per foot slope on that roof. And
So that's going to really help.
that'll help you, yes. And while it doesn't look like it's much taller, the building is actually going to have somewhat of a parapet, almost a 2-foot parapet around it that allows that rise and fall of the roof for drainage, which you won't see from down on the ground.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm. These are just the flat elevations of the building, so you can see. Another thing that I think the brick, carrying the brick up to this height will also help tie in with the other buildings that are around the square and kind of hopefully help to bring the scale of it down to match those buildings. I mean, the building is as tall as it is. There's not much we could do about it other than take a floor off to bring it down, but we feel like by taking that brick up, that it'll tie in very nicely with the scale of the buildings around the court, the square there. As you can see, the other elevations are pretty straightforward. The side towards the jail and towards the alleyway between the new courthouse, they're all pretty straightforward. Just punched windows, opening, and then the one Main Street side there. These are just the floor plans of it. The lower floor, the basement floor will house the investigations group as well as evidence processing. We are actually reworking the core of the building. The stair to the left of the plan is the existing stair. The 2 elevators there are the existing elevator shafts that are in the building now when you go in the front lobby. But currently, if any of you are familiar with the building, there's a 3rd elevator towards the back corner, which the prisoners are escorted up in, and the stair to the right is actually pushed further back. And so what we're doing here is doing away with that 3rd elevator, since it's not a building that needs a lot of public access any longer. 2 elevators are plenty, and we're replacing that back stair, if you will, bringing it forward to be in line with the other and creating a very efficient core, which allows for a very open floor plan towards the rear of the building. We're reworking all the restrooms, of course, to be ADA compliant, and have stacked those up through the building, as you'll see here in a minute. And the 2 elevators, the way they will work is the elevator to the left and the stair to the left are for public access, for public that needs to access any of the floors in the building. And the stair and the elevator to the right are for staff or folks that work in the building. So you get that separation between public and staff for security reasons, but all within that same shaft of that building. Makes a very efficient core. The main floor will house the patrol and civil process groups. There will be a door to the right rear here, which is currently where the door is into the back of the courthouse. which will allow access back to the parking area here behind the building where there's, we propose that there would be parking for the police cruisers, the deputies and so forth can come and go through that access. The main entrance to the building, or main public entrance, is still going to be the one that's down in the middle of the building at the bottom of the page here. You will essentially enter the building as you do currently now. You will be able to go into a public vestibule and be able to access up through those various floors with the building. Now, there will be controlled access from that vestibule. Once you come into the vestibule, you'll have to actually be acknowledge your arrival to the administrative person, and they would have to push the button to let you in the door. So it will be a very controlled environment, even though it is a public. We say that's the public side of the building, but it will be controlled access into the building for security purposes. To the lower right-hand corner, we have some interview rooms or conference rooms where the public can be talked to by the sheriff's personnel, and then all the way to the right is a secondary entrance, and that's primarily for the staff that is going to be working up on the top floor in the regional emergency communications center. So they'll be able to enter the building separately and gain access to the upper floor without having to interact with the sheriff's group. The second floor is primarily the sheriff's offices, and then the administrative support folks are here in the back. Top left-hand corner of the building, that area in blue, is a public or multi-purpose room where they can have training. They can also have news conferences for the sheriff, sort of a multi-purpose room. There's a movable partition between the two rooms here, the classroom and the multi-purpose room, that allow that to open up and be one larger space for larger functions. The third floor right now is going to be left unfinished. It'll be a shell only. There was just, eventually this will be used for expanding the civil process, and the warrants would be located on this floor. We'll do the budget tightness. We decided to forego this floor finish out at this time, but it'll be set up so that it can be finished out in the future. And then the top floor is devoted to the regional, the New River Valley Regional Emergency Communication Center. Hope I've got that authority. Sorry.
Just call it NRV 911.
NRV 911. Okay. And this will have the dispatch center, which will be located across the top of the page here. This will have capacity to have up to 14 dispatch stations with 2 supervisor stations, supervisor's office. They will have a break room, lounge area here, personnel lockers. There also is room for an emergency operations center down there in the lower right-hand corner, and then administrative offices around the rest of the floor. And then the rest is the penthouse, of course, will be for mechanical. Any questions on layout or use of the building?
Say the 5th floor will be used for mechanical.
The 5th floor is the penthouse, which would be, that would be primarily mechanical. There is some leftover space there, but mostly it'll be mechanical space and electrical rooms, that type of thing.
One of the things that we'll be doing between now and the time that we begin construction is all that stuff that's currently in the penthouse, and there's a lot of storage, we'll call that storage, is going to have to come out. So we're slowly working to get that done. Some folks have got it out. Some folks have still got some work to do. But
this is the project budget. The most recent cost estimates, which have just come in after the final drawings have been pretty much completed here. We're at $11.3 million, of which 9.5 of that is what we call the core and the shell, or the basic building and the enclosure and the sheriff's office. And then we've been tracking the authorities' cost separately, and that's about 1.8 million of that 11.3. Next is the furniture, equipment, and moving cost. Again, these are budgeted numbers here that we're carrying on our budget. $820,000 for that. Testing inspection fees of $80,000. Our fees, the resident project representative, and then we're carrying a 7.5% contingency right now, which would be a total project cost of $14.37. Yes, ma'am.
Where would be like your technology fee?
That's in that
The furniture equipment?
Mhm, yeah. And actually, the elevators now don't go up to the penthouse level, and they'll be changed so that the elevators will actually go all the way to the penthouse level. We're using a newer technology elevator that doesn't require that machine room to be on top any longer. So we're not, when you look at the building, you won't see a bump on top of it where the elevators come up, but they will be done. And that's obviously to get, that allows access to all the equipment that's going to be up there. The UPS system, the uninterrupted power system, will be located up there, which has big batteries that you have to change out every so many years. So having that ability to get to that top floor for maintenance and maintaining the equipment up there is certainly, I think it's going to be a great improvement for that facility too.
Thanks.
Any other questions about that before we move on to the schedule? As I alluded to, we're finishing up the design now, and with your authorization, we'll be ready to go to bid on this right at the 1st of October this year. So in about a month of bidding, we take bids in November and award a contract sometime late November, early December. So construction could conceivably begin as early as December on this. And we've allotted here 16 months for construction on this. We hope it won't take that long, but I think we've all seen what construction tends to drag on at times. So we're saying now that April 1st of 14 would be the move-in date for the building.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a question. At one point in time, again, this is rumors around the courthouse, that was talked that probation and parole would be a renter in that building. At one point in time, the state would rent a portion. Is that off the table?
Well, I don't know that it's off the table, but I don't think we've allocated any space in the current design.
No, there's no space in the current design for that.
Okay, and so are they just still planning on staying in Radford then, to your knowledge?
I don't know the answer to that. One issue I wanted to mention too, and I saw Bob walk in back there, and it triggered the thought. We've got to, we still need to have a discussion with the old clerk's office and the old sheriff's office as well. In the original plans, as you recall, the plan was to be able to accommodate the number of parking spaces. We needed to take those two facilities down. There's certainly been some concern from the historical folks about the old clerk's office, and I think this board had indicated they wanted to revisit that. There's also been discussion that there may be an opportunity, if we can save the current sheriff's office, to move, not necessarily probation and parole, but there's some other services, court services that are out at the corner of Radford Road and Depot Street now, and the old library church building. There'd been some talk about trying to pull those back over to get everybody on at least the same campus. The sheriff's building isn't a horrible building, it's just small, and so that's the reason we need to get the sheriff into more space. But if we can somehow work with the town to address the parking concerns, we may be able to continue to utilize those facilities for something. So,
Any other comments? Randy, I guess we're done. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and hopefully this project will proceed and go smoothly for everyone concerned.
well, poor Steve's still sitting back in the back. Poor Steve is just wrapping up the courthouse project that's nearly killed him, and now we're gonna start another one. So
7 days.
there is 7 days. That's right. We did give you a week if you want to take some time off.
Craig, we don't have to do anything to authorize them to go on with it or anything like that, do we?
Just a consensus to keep rolling is what we need.
Thumbs up for me.
Sorry with me.
Yeah.
Go get some bids.
Keep going.
All right, great. We'll be bids. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
I can't believe we built a building just 25 years ago. Let us stand apart. You know, I can't think about the people who are on the board.
Right. The next item on our work session is our health insurance discussion, and Karen Edmonds,
Karen, do you want to introduce the whole group?
county HR people.
I'll let
Sorry to keep you ladies waiting so long.
Here we go.
Best for last.
Good evening. We're here to talk about health insurance again, and I'd like to introduce Claire Holbrook. She is the consultant with Wells Fargo for the consortium. So she was here several months ago, trying to remember how long ago, to talk about this topic, and there were a lot of questions. So she's brought two guests with her this evening to give a testimonial about self-insurance, and they'll be coming forward to talk with you and take your questions as well.
Good evening. As Karen said, I'm Claire Holbrook, and I am a consultant with Wells Fargo Insurance Services, and I work with the consortium of which Montgomery County is a part, to manage and project and work with your health insurance program. Several months ago, we were here and we talked about the basic concept of the funding of the plan and the concept of changing from a fully insured funding arrangement to a self-insured funding arrangement. What we want to do tonight is to, one, give you an opportunity to ask some questions with some folks who are with Roanoke County and Roanoke County Schools and who have worked with the self-insured funding arrangement for a number of years. They are, and they'll be coming up in a moment, Penny Hodge, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Finance for Roanoke County Public Schools, as well as Rebecca Owens, who is the Director of Finance for the County of Roanoke. In advance of them coming up, I just wanted to take a little moment to tell you kind of where we are in our process and what we're looking at, give you a quick review of the difference in the funding arrangements, and then we'll let Penny and Rebecca come up and just kind of tell you how it works for them, how it's worked, give you an opportunity to ask questions of them, and kind of just take it from there. We are still at a point where we are in a discovery and research mode with all of the different entities that make up the consortium. And we are proceeding right now with, we're at a point, we have a July renewal for the consortium, and that means we have to get to work early. This is the year in which we have to market the plans. So we need to go back out for public procurement. We're in the process of getting ready to release RFPs into the marketplace the end of September, the 1st of October, that will go to the carriers for both actually the medical and dental programs. At this point, the plan is to release RFPs that would ask the carriers to respond in both a fully insured funding arrangement as well as a self-insured funding arrangement. It keeps the doors open and allows us to kind of proceed with this process with all the entities and make a decision of whether we will stay fully insured or we would proceed with a self-insured funding arrangement. That being said, let me just give you kind of the 101 again on the differences in the funding arrangements. And really what this is you are currently under a fully insured funding arrangement underwritten by Anthem, who manages and administers your plan, but they also accept the risk for the plan. So their underwriters look at your claims experience, They look at what it's going to cost them to run the plan, and they generate premiums. And from those premiums, the county pays a portion, the employee pays a portion, and from that you fund the program. The premium goes to Anthem, and Anthem is responsible, based on the premium collected, to pay all the claims, to pay their administrative expense, and anything that may exceed the claims, they are at risk for that. Because they are the ones that are at risk, they are more conservative in how they develop the premiums of which you would pay. What we are looking at for the consortium, which as a population is a group of between 1,550 to 1,600 employees enrolled in this program as the consortium, we're looking at the possibility of moving it from a fully insured to a self-insured arrangement. What that means is that the risk for paying the claims transfers from the carrier, Anthem in this case, to the consortium. There are reinsurance that you can purchase that limits the risk that you purchase. Those are specific stop loss, which limits your risk on an individual catastrophic claim, so that the consortium would never be responsible for, say, $1 million claim. It would be capped at whatever limit was chosen. And then there is aggregate reinsurance, which limits the risk of you capping out on all of the dollars. It says if we think the expected claim cost is going to be, $12 million, then you'll never pay more than 115 or 120% of that amount. So those are the types of reinsurance that can be purchased to protect an entity when they're in a self-insured arrangement. The advantages of being in a self-insured arrangement is that the organization gets to manage the risk, gets to hold the margins, and therefore limits how much additional margin they're paying into the carrier and that the carrier is making on their business. So over the long run, you would expect that a group under a self-insured arrangement would pay less money for their health insurance program because you've pulled the margins out of that program and transferred some of the risk. We recognize that this is a very complex kind of change for the consortium to consider. Then one of the other advantages in looking at that is that when you are the risk bearer, you also have more flexibility, and you can negotiate it from a stronger point with the carriers than you can when they are holding the risk. And as carriers are moving forward under healthcare reform, they are becoming more and more conservative and a little bit more difficult to negotiate with, and that's one of the options that you have here. Do you have any questions about the basic funding at this point? And you certainly can ask questions at any time along the way.
Okay.
Claire, I do want to mention to you as well, or mention to the group as well, that the superintendent and I have had several conversations about the county schools' current health insurance arrangement as well, and they have indicated that they want to participate in discussions as well because they're evaluating options. And one thing we've talked about from the county is looking at taking the schools and the county's insurance and looking at that as a possible group as well. And they are also evaluating self-insurance as a potential option because, again, in the long term, it gives the entity more control of the plan and helps save some money. So,
what is the probability of Anthem being the go-to people that you would have to insure your overages?
I'm not sure what your question is.
Your
stop loss provider?
on your stop loss. Anthem is one of the ones that obviously, I guess, has that offer.
Yes, they do offer stop loss. Most of the carriers do. Typically in this market, when you go out for self-insurance in the Virginia market, the traditional carriers are who you will see respond. The Anthems, the Southern Health, the Aetna, the United Healthcare's, Cygnus. There are not many left. They will respond. They also do reinsurance. They also do become the claim administrator. So when we go out to bid, we send it out to the market and anybody can choose to respond. we've been working with Anthem now for 4 years, going on 5. And they would be responding. It would all depend on where they come in as to who we would work with going forward.
Okay, is there a typical percentage that one of these folks would normally charge for whatever it is that they do as far as?
Well, it depends on the contract. If you're looking at a self-insured arrangement, they're going to have an administrative expense. I would say, and then on top of the administrative expense, there's a separate component of the reinsurance, which is really a risk charge, the reinsurance. And it's really difficult to tell you what that is as a percent, because they're going to look at the experience of the group. They're going to look at the size of the group and the actual risk involved in terms of what your actual large group catastrophic claims expense is.
So they're going to look at basically what they look at now.
Correct. They'll look at essentially the same thing, except that they're going to pull their risk charge out, because they're no longer, right now they build into their fees an actual risk charge, but since they won't be at risk on the claims, they'll pull that out. In exchange, they'll put in the reinsurance costs. At the end of the day, in a first year, you don't look at going to self-insurance as a way to save money in that first year. It is a long-term process. You would expect that claims are going to be claims regardless of the funding arrangement. They do not change. One thing about a funding arrangement is it's transparent to your actual employees. The plan designs are the same. Their process of receiving care is the same, so employees their pattern of getting sick or how they utilize services do not change based on the funding arrangement. So all of that stays the same, but what you expect is over time, as you control the risk and you reduce the amount of margin that the carriers build into their premium, that you're going to see savings. You're going to have the opportunity to build up reserves to help you in times of higher claim years, because claims do fluctuate.
Sure.
And that,
and I understand.
and I'm sorry, I can't really give you like an actual percent that Anthem charges or that a carrier charges in general. In general, we would expect the claims to be 85 to 90% of your total expense.
Yeah,
But it's kind of hard to say exactly where that's going to fall.
Okay, it seems to me, and I was wondering if it seems to you or to anyone else that might want to chime in here, that since your major carriers have now been told they can only have 15% of profit for their total, does that seem like it's bringing down the cost of insurance?
That 15% only applies to the insured market. It doesn't apply in the self-insured market.
I understand.
What I will say is what I'm observing is that the carriers are changing the way they price some of their business, because they know that they've got to keep the large group market at 85%, and they've got to keep the small group market at 80%. And by small group, it's under 50 lives, so it's the very smaller groups. They are changing, and we are seeing changes in strategies. Some of the things we are okay with, some of the things we don't agree with, and we've had some discussions with some of the carriers regarding that. But they are definitely looking at how they can change their business to make sure they're maximizing that 85%, because it's a pretty strict formula that they have to abide by.
Right. Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions on that, I'd like to bring up Penny and Rebecca and let the two of them kind of just give you an overview. And please feel free to ask them questions. And
Hi. Thank you for inviting us tonight. I think Claire did a nice job of explaining really the first thing I was going to talk to you about. I'm with the school system, and we went with the self-insured group health plan in 1990. I was actually there then. I didn't need reading glasses then, but I will now to see my notes. Obviously, we've been doing it for more than a few years. And from my perspective, having worked with it all of those years, it's perhaps one of the best things we did. We're a little bit larger than your consortium. Our school employees, it's around 2,100 or so. The county, I think, is another 900. So together, For us, working together was the first thing. Working together as a county and school group, regardless of self-insuring, I think is a positive thing. But doing it together and going to self-insurance, we did go with a specific stop loss. I think actually when we started, our specific stop loss was maybe $75,000. And what that meant was that no one employee could incur claims more than $75,000 that we would have to pay for. So we were putting a cap on each individual employee right off the bat. If there was any kind of catastrophic injury or illness, we would cover the first $75,000. The second thing,
To clarify that, because I think Ms. Biggs is misunderstanding. Anything above that, the carrier paid for. It didn't go back to the employee.
Okay. It's costing $75,000 to walk into a hospital.
Just save your breath if that doesn't go.
this is fee for insurance. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, if she didn't catch it, I was. I knew that was.
We are up to, currently our specific stop loss is at $200,000. So we cover up to the first $200,000 with the self-insurance. Anything over $200,000 hits that second insurance policy and is paid for. The second cap that we implemented, and Claire also addressed, and you would definitely want to have as you started out, is an aggregate cap. And we did that using the carrier that we were working with at the time, who was projecting our claims experience, the maximum amount that they anticipated that we would incur the following year based on our history and based on medical trends. We purchased a reinsurance policy so that if it went over that number, again, we didn't pay for that out of the self-insured pool. The reinsurance carrier paid for that. So we capped it at the individual level, we capped it at the total pool. Then we took all those maximum claims, the worst case scenario, and we calculated out what the premium should be, and what portion of that the employee paid, and what portion of that the school board or the county paid. So we essentially fully insured our self-insured pool. We made sure that we were going to collect enough premiums from the employee and from the employer to cover the maximum number of claims. The beauty of it was we didn't have the maximum number of claims that year, and I actually don't think we've had any year that we've met that max. So the difference stayed in our bank account. It didn't go into the carrier's bank account. From a fiscally conservative standpoint, that's 100% what you would do. From a risk standpoint, we capped our risk. We made sure that the risk could not exceed what we could fiscally cover. The net result of that is, we've been doing it for, I guess, 22 years, and I looked back yesterday, back to 2001, because that's the records I had immediately accessible. Our reserve balance has grown every year since 2001. Even though we've had a few years in there with really high claims experience, they did not hit the maximum. So every year what we collected in premiums from our employees and from our county and schools was more than what we paid out in actual claims and administrative fees. And I say that with also the qualifier that we did not have any double-digit increases in our health insurance over the past, I think, 12 years. So we've also maintained really low claims renewal percentages, which is advantageous to both our employees and to our school system budget and our county budget. One of the things that comes out of actually taking on this philosophy when you calculate your premiums at the maximum liability rate is that you end up with this reserve balance, and in our case, over the past 4 years, that's been a lifesaver. Because what we've done, both of our boards agreed that when we could not give salary increases due to all of the state budget cuts, particularly on the school side, but we've also experienced the losses in the real estate and personal property. What our boards wanted to do was do what they could to ensure that employees did not have a net reduction in pay. And so they used portions of those reserve balances to subsidize the premium increase for each of the past 4 years. Premium increases all 4 years were less than 5%. But that was still 5% that didn't come from our operating budget on the employer side, and it didn't have to come from our employees' paychecks.
Can we ask you a question?
Sure.
What is the average cost of your insurance per person?
The employee the employees pay, I think it's just under $50 for employee only, and I think it's $400 and some for family per month. Per month.
How much per family?
It's in the $400 range, and I didn't bring my rates with me. It's in the $400 to $500 range for family policy out of the employee's paycheck.
What carrier do you use now?
Anthem.
Anthem.
Yeah.
And that's, they pay $50 for what?
For single-only coverage.
For single
Employee only. I believe
per
it's like
month.
$48 or $49.
And they pay about $400 for family.
I think it is a little over $400.
So
what's your starting
when we get that back to ours, our individual and
Have you got those
employee
numbers?
pays nothing.
Right now, our employees don't pay anything for employee only.
And that's a philosophy. That's different boards have different philosophies regarding that. I know one of our
Karen's doing this at me.
For a regular plan, they pay $14 a month,
Okay, and then what's family for the?
$720.
and that's a philosophy.
Right.
Our county philosophy, and I'll speak for Rebecca too, and she can chime in if she disagrees with me. Our county philosophy is that employees should be paying for some portion so that they're vested in what they're getting. That you want to have some consumer-driven behavior there, and if they're paying for part of it, they have to at least think about that because they're going to see some increases over time depending on some of the ways they use it. And then the second philosophy is we want our employees to be able to afford to cover their family. And that's a lot of money. Even at our rates, it's a lot of money to come out of employees' paycheck each month.
Another question, do you have a nurse available to all of your employees?
On the county side, we implemented a wellness program, and so we do actually offer a nurse practitioner 20 hours a week at 2 different locations, and so that's fairly new for us. We're in, I believe, our 2nd year. It does seem to be working well and does provide an option for employees, but certainly does not replace their health care.
Okay, and do you also have like an exercise program that you've implemented to help keep that down?
We have not done that on the county side.
Okay, thank you.
No?
I know you're talking about insurance and costs and things.
What about their salary?
Now, do you have a richer plan than the lower plan, or you just have one plan?
We have one plan. We have the Key Care 200, which is kind of standard.
Yeah.
With the 20/40 copay and drugs and all that.
And that compares to our richer plan? That's.
And how much does the county pay per employee?
We pay the same rate. We have the same rate for county.
That's not my question.
400 and some.
I hope these numbers I'm hearing are, we insure our county employees at about $600 a month. Now,
Ours is less than that for the employee only.
okay, how much is that?
So like our single coverage for a single is around $500, and the county is picking up about 90% of that. So the employee is responsible for less than 50.
Okay.
It does vary, for the different coverages that we offer. Family, the county is paying
Probably 700 or 800.
Yeah.
In our family, we pay
Less than that.
$720 a month.
60-some%.
Yeah.
That's a fairly large.
The employer pays $720 a month, and you're paying $500 or
The
$400.
thing is, at the end of the day, claims are claims. Your claims, you're going to have to pay premiums that cover your claims,
Yeah.
not ours.
Yeah.
And likewise us. So how you spread your premium across your coverage types and between employee and employer is your decision. Even with self-insured, you still have 100% control over that.
And you really have more control with self-insurance because you've got flexibility aside from the carrier.
The carrier's going to have to collect the same amount of money.
Right.
I ask a question. What is your salary scale?
Which one?
for the county and for the schools.
It depends on which job you're talking
Well,
about.
I'm talking about ordinary school teachers. What do you start with?
higher than ours.
What does it go up
I'll tell you
to?
that.
Your employees, depending on whatever grade and whatever you do, what is an average starting and what's an average upper salary scale?
For the county, our salary scale, of course, is based on the job position, and we have a
Right.
minimum, a midpoint, and a maximum.
Right.
For the county as a whole, what we use for budgetary purposes is just an overall average salary, and that's about $42,000 when we take all of our positions and look at all the entire population.
Does that include any benefits?
No.
That's
just
42,000 is based solely on the salary.
Yeah.
And so that's what we use when we're trying to make a determination, as to whether or not, an increase is going to negatively, impact an employee if we're not able to give an increase of salary.
So what is ours?
Average,
For what she's talking about?
our average is around 39.
What?
39.
Okay.
Last time I checked.
All right, what about the school system?
On the school side, we never average all of our employees because we have bus aides.
What do you start with?
So
Well,
the
on your-
teacher's salaries is this year, I think 38.
To begin?
38,000 each
And
beginning.
it goes up to?
Goes up
as a
to about
teacher?
60 without degree supplements.
I need a transfer.
With what?
Without degree supplements, because that depends which degree you have.
So what is your degree supplement?
It depends on whether you have.
Well, what for masters?
It's a range between step 0 and 22.
What?
There's a range of salary amounts between step 0 and step like 22. It's different at every single step depending on how many years experience you have.
Okay, what is that?
So, I can't.
You don't know?
No, I can't quote my
Okay.
skills.
All right.
Sorry
Okay,
about that.
that's fine. That's all right. I just thought maybe you all
They're
had that.
online though. If you
All right.
pull up my
I just haven't-
finance site, you will
Right.
get
We
the
haven't had a
scales.
chance to do that, so
Yeah.
thank you.
The only other, I think, couple points I wanted to make was one about the stability of our group size. I think what you will find when you talk with your schools and with your insurance carrier is that your school claims tend to be higher than local government claims. And Claire can correct me. I think that's industry norm, and I don't know why, and no one's ever really been able to say exactly why, but school claims tend to be higher. For us, because
Stress has a lot to do with it.
Stress, right.
More
And it's
stress,
scary,
let me
For the school side of the equation, our claims are higher, so when we can spread our claims across the county part of the pool too, that helps us. So you would think, well, why would the county want to even work with us? Well, the county has a much, much smaller pool. So by themselves, there's going to be a larger margin in there from the carriers. So it's really a win-win for both of us. And we remind ourselves of that on an annual basis when we see my trend is up here and hers is down there. And we say, well, remember, this is, a collaboration. But the bottom line is we both work for the citizens of Roanoke County. And so if we can get a better deal as a package, regardless of which entity is the higher or the lower, then it's a good fiscal decision for our two boards. From the standpoint of saving money, we have hands down saved money. We've been in it for 22 years, and probably the first, 5 years or so, we were breaking even or just making a little bit of money. We were not putting aside large reserves. But over time, when you have those good claims years and you've set your premium at the max, you're going to accumulate. Now, we have actually left Anthem and come back during that time, and because you want to keep that ability to do that, you have to make sure that you do build a reserve that will allow you to cover the run out when you switch carriers, because you don't want to be locked into one carrier. You still want to be able to be, competitively negotiating for your coverage. We did that. We paid out Anthem as we went with a new carrier. Things were not as rosy as they were supposed to be with a new carrier, and we returned to Anthem within a couple years. So we still have our reserves, and when I looked yesterday at the last 12 years, just the The increase in the reserves on an annual basis over the 12 years, had we paid that to Anthem instead of into our bank account, we would have paid over $10 million more in health care in the last 12 or 13 years. So that's a significant dollar, especially considering what we've been doing in the last 4 years, trying to balance budgets. We've capped our risk. We've made sure that, we know what the maximum risk can be, period. And we fiscally covered that risk. So we feel like we're actually not doing anything risky in this case. So that's those are the points that I wanted to make with you tonight, and I'm more than happy to entertain further questions as long as they don't involve the salary scale.
Have you had any, because everything sounds like it's been really positive, are there any negative aspects of this that you've experienced?
I was trying to think about that last night because Claire asked me to talk about any problems, and I couldn't think of even a small one to tell you. It's more, I guess it's more complicated in the sense that you have to be involved in the premium calculations. Claire and her folks do a lot of that for you. But because we have a philosophy a certain way in Roanoke County, we sometimes, most of the time, manipulate it some. So you have to know a little more. I didn't know what specific stop loss and aggregate stop loss was 22 years ago. Didn't think I ever needed to know. So I know a lot more about insurance now than I did. But outside of that, it's transparent. Like she said, for the employees, they have no clue. They have absolutely no idea that there's anything different, except for the fact that they know that we have subsidized their insurance premium the last several years because we had this reserve and we explained where it came from. So I can't think of a single problem to tell you about it.
Thank you.
I had a couple of questions actually, and these might be more directed towards Craig or maybe even towards Karen. I believe you said something. Someone said something earlier about perhaps Montgomery County schools might be interested in joining the consortium. Were we to go to the self-insured system?
It's not necessarily joining the consortium, but discussing with the county, doing just what these ladies did, be the county and the schools together.
Okay. Yeah.
Not necessarily as a part of the consortium, but as our own group.
But as their own group. Okay. Related to that, and I think this kind of goes to maybe what Ms. Perkins was asking about too, is that I'm wondering about like how flexible these plans are allowed to be, and if we go to the self-insurance, I mean, who determines, for example, like the subsidies, what percentage whatever body this consortium actually pays, and what we pass on to each individual insured person?
The employee versus the employer.
Yeah.
That was a decision that actually can be made at the entity level. So as part of the consortium, Montgomery County's philosophy towards employee and employer contributions may be different than the town of Blacksburg or Pulaski County. And whether you're insured or self-insured, that's an independent decision that you can continue to make. You don't have to mirror one funding. What we do within the consortium today that would continue under any funding rate is to have a formula in place through the joint powers agreement that the consortium has signed, where we develop rates based a portion on the overall risk of the group and the claims experience of the total group, as well as looking at the specific experience of each entity, so that you're limiting the cross-subsidy between these independent organizations that make up the consortium. We would continue that process under the self-insured funding or the fully insured funding. So when you sit down to it, there are certain decisions that everybody has to make together, and then there continue to be independent decisions. And your contribution philosophy is an independent decision.
Okay, so we would have as a board for our employees the flexibility to. Okay.
Control over that, yes.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Are things required, like when you are self-insured, does that give you more of an ability to require certain things of the people that you're insuring? Like, say, you want them to do certain things to maintain their health? Or is that the same as?
That would be the same under any funding arrangement. What you would gain in some flexibility would be maybe creating a plan design that incents maybe better consumer behavior. Maybe I have some self-insured clients that are looking at, well, we want to contract with a more efficient group of providers for orthopedic services. They can do that when they're self-insured. They can't do that when they're insured. I'm not recommending that, but I'm just saying that you break free of only being able to do what the carrier offers you. You can look at kind of carving out pieces of it, managing it separately. That will save you money, and that's what a lot of groups are looking at. Maybe they pull the prescription drug pharmacy program out of the main carrier and put it directly with the pharmacy benefit manager because they can lower the cost. Those are things that you cannot do when you're insured, that you have more flexibility for yourself.
Well, like in Roanoke County, I mean, is your plan so that people can choose their own doctors? I mean, they don't have to go to a special set of doctors?
They have the same PPO network that Montgomery County uses today.
It is the Anthem network that they still use, because since we're contracting with Anthem, it's still the exact same network anybody else would use for KeyCare 200. And if they choose to go to a doctor who's not in the Anthem directory, which is very, very few, they're going to get out-of-network benefits, just like you would with a regularly insured plan.
Are you all able to offer your employees dental insurance on both the school and county side?
We do, but we do it in a standalone policy, separate from Anthem.
Okay.
If I could jump in, I mean, if I'm understanding this correctly, really the only difference between the self-insured and the fully insured is how you manage risk.
It's how you manage risk. It's a little bit of difference in the mechanics of payment.
Yeah, but ultimately, I mean, the coverage doesn't necessarily change. I mean, that's you choose the same plan.
Yeah, for the employees,
yes,
what they've said, they don't see any difference at all. When we implemented this, where I was in North Carolina, for the first year, we used the same providers that we had under the fully insured plan. It was Blue Cross Blue Shield at that point, but same thing. They just went from being a fully insured provider to we paid them to be the administrative services to provide the network, and so the employees didn't even change doctors. They, it doesn't. The two key things that we've wanted to emphasize to the board by looking at self-insurance is trying to continue to provide flexibility for the employees in terms of provision of services, premiums, and the other thing that we've looked at, especially in these budget times, is trying to maintain or trying to find a long-term way to control our destiny with our health care dollars instead of just handing a check to Anthem every year and say, y'all manage it, if you make money, great. We want to be able to retain some of that to do exactly what they've done in Roanoke and have the flexibility to manage that.
Yeah, I think maybe it's the term self-insurance. It gets it conjures this image that you're changing the plan and stuff like that, and that the person who needs the coverage is actually doing stuff, and it doesn't seem like it's actually. I mean, and I honestly didn't understand it very well now, but this seems like it would require work, on our part or the consortium's part. But I think ultimately, it seems like, I mean, from your experience, it's ultimately beneficial in the long run. So.
Is there what about localities across Virginia? Like, how many others do this? You're one, but how many others do it?
It tends to be the size of the locality, so certainly on the larger end, but like City of Roanoke is self-insured, City of Roanoke Schools is self-insured. They do that independently. They do not purchase together, but they're separately self-insured.
City of Salem.
City of Salem is self-insured. If you move towards Central Virginia, Henrico County and county schools, they went self-insured in 2008. Hanover County and schools has been self-insured for 20 plus years, as long as I've been familiar with them. The City of Richmond and Richmond Public Schools, they decided to join purchasing with self-insured in 2011. It's a relatively new experience for them to both be self-insured. The schools were self-insured for years. You have your larger entities like Prince William County County and schools, Fairfax County and schools, Loudoun County and schools, all of them have been self-insured for years. It does, just as whether you were a public employer or a private employer, the size of the organization creates the stability in the claims experience so that there's not as much good year, bad year. Just the more bodies, the concept of spreading the risk makes it possible to go self-insured the larger you are. And that's why we can look at it as a consortium. You can look at it as Montgomery County and schools. It might be difficult for just the county to look at it and your size.
Thank you.
What was the number of folks that y'all have insured
Between the
in your
county and the
consortium?
schools, 3,500.
2,500?
3,500.
30.
Yeah, you said 2,100
21 or
in the
2,200.
school system.
And then the county has 900, but then we also have the Western Virginia Regional Jail Authority and the Resource Authority are also on our healthcare plan.
Oh.
So
We
you
have
have
our own
about
little
3,500.
Yeah.
So when you guys buy this other insurance that you kept talking about to limit your risk, how many, I mean, do you go out and bid for that, or do you know like what?
We will bid that as a part of this RFP, and so that we'll get responses from the carriers that respond to pay to want to do the administration. They will also like to do the reinsurance. You may also get quotes from independent stop loss reinsurance organizations. It's really up to them if they want.
Are these people that have been in business for a while?
Oh, we always, that's something we check the financials of those organizations very carefully to make sure that they have the ratings, stability, to make sure that they could be a appropriate partner for anybody to work with. That's very important. And when you're working with, let's say you work with families and use their reinsurance, you've got that same stability.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
210,000.
We thank you very much.
Let me ask you a question before you go. I'm just here trying to do some math. And when I come up with 3,500 participants, and if you're charging each one of those $50 per month, that's $600 per year times 3,500, sounds like to me $2,100,000. I hope you're making money.
Because the premium that we gave you was for the single coverage, and so I don't know right off the percentages of those employees that have single coverage, but we have quite a few that have family coverage, so we're collecting a lot more for from those individuals.
Yeah, I'm just saying, though, if all of them were just the ones that gets 50, that you charge $50 per month, that's $600 per year times 3,500 is $2,100,000.
But all the claims have to come out of that. I mean, that's all the claim. That's what all the claims have to be paid out of.
No, they pay the insurance in it. The claim is paid out.
Yeah, and right about, Mr. Green, just to give you their budget for the current fiscal year for their total healthcare program is right around $20 million. And that's probably 90 to 92% of that goes towards claim costs. So, that's the consortium's health expense as a group is about 12 to 13 million, is that right?
Our share is about 3 million.
Yeah, so when you look at the consortium as a group, your healthcare expense is about 12 million, counties is about 3 million, so it's a lot of dollars.
That's why we're trying to figure out how to get a better handle on it.
That's why we're always looking at ways that we can control that cost.
I was just looking at what was over and above. You said you were charging everybody something before they could get part of the experience of paying. And you were charging a minimum of $50 per month for those folks. And that was $600, and $3,500 was $2,100,000 on top of anything else that.
Anybody else?
Just seems like an awful lot of money.
How much are we paying a year to Anthem? How much do we pay
All total for our health care, I've forgotten the numbers.
About 3 million. It's over 3 million a year. Over 3 million a year.
And the school board is probably 3 times that.
Their single rates are higher than yours.
Oh, we'd have to charge people a lot of money to make $3 million, wouldn't we? We only have 300 employees, right?
4.
No, that's what our healthcare expenses are a year now. We cover that between the county and what we pay and what we collect from the employees for premiums. It's $3 million a year.
But if we want to recoup it,
But if we don't,
The
if we
thing
charge
is,
$50
we're
per
paying
person,
Anthem's profits right now.
then that's only $210,000.
that's only $210,000.
Okay, let's
Charge $50.
We need a bigger group.
But if you look at it a different way, you're paying $3 million to Anthem or
We're
whoever
writing
right
that check,
now.
yep.
But if your claims actually were only $2.5 million this year, you still paid Anthem $3 million.
Well,
We're not. The $3 million is in our bank account, and we transferred only the claims plus the administrative fees, so the extra, whatever wasn't used for claims, stays with you.
That's right.
That's where self-insurance.
And that's where
I'd
over
like to
time, you
I'd
really,
like to see what that is over the past 5 years, 10 years, and see whether it's really worth our effort or not. Some of us have some really heavy health care problems.
well, but again, the bottom line is just what we said. If the county's average annual expense for healthcare is $3 million, and that includes basically writing the check to Anthem every month to cover the claims, administrative costs, and profit. If we have several years where our claims are 2.5, 2.7, if they're lower than that, we get to keep the difference to help offset future rate increases versus just handing it over to Anthem for profit every
I
year.
want to know how many years have we had? How many years have we had money under, our claims under what?
We never have because we always pay the same amount. I think that's what they're trying to say, is that we always pay
Yeah.
5% rate increase, we pay the extra 5%.
Right.
We don't, even if our rates went down, our claims went down, we're going to pay 5% more because that's what Anthem's charging us. Here we would have that extra money, as they just said, would go into our bank account.
Yeah, I
so that we can
understand that.
subsidize,
Yeah.
these charges.
Yeah.
And again, like, I don't think the coverage isn't going to change. Like,
Yeah.
nobody's going to see any change in their coverage. It's ultimately going to result in long-term cost savings.
I understand all that.
And Anthem goes up every year.
No, they didn't go.
No, some years
they
they
didn't
don't.
go.
Actually,
Yeah.
they did, and we were able to use some savings from the consortium to offset that. It was kind of like self-insurance, but not quite.
Well, the last question, how much of your time does it take, or the county or the school system's time, does it take more of your time? Because don't you have to sort of,
Yeah, but it's,
and the reason I'm
we've been
asking.
doing it for so long.
Well, the reason I'm asking you that is we're real short on both sides with personnel, and personnel now are doing the jobs of more than one person. So if you add another layer, I just wondered how that works.
It takes a little bit of time during renewal. I have an office of 2, myself and one other person, and a $150 million budget. It's just one part of what I do, and during renewal, we work with Claire. So she does the lion's worth of the work, getting the RFPs out, analyzing. Wells Fargo analyzes the RFPs, which is a tremendously time-consuming job that I wouldn't be able to do. So when I sit down at the table with Rebecca, we're looking at, okay, these are the options. These are the decisions we need to bring to the school board that we need action on. When you can save this kind of money, I think that's not even a trade-off. You have to do it.
Have we seen anyone revert back and give up the private insurance?
That's a good question.
Not in the last 10 years. About 20 years ago, you saw some of that because that was when
People jumping.
HMOs hit the market and they were offering fully insured rate guarantees for 2 and 3 years. And back then, some large entities said, oh, I can't pass up that deal. They have since gone back to self-insurance.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody? We all answered? This has been very informative.
Yes, it has
Thank you,
been.
and thank you
very
ladies
much.
coming from Roanoke
Don't
County.
worry about the salary scale, I'll look it up.
Taking your time this evening.
Sorry for keeping you so late, ladies.
The next item on the agenda is to go out a closed meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Work session.
Work session.
I thought you already did one of this.
Do I need to certify the work session?
No, let's not go all the way back to that.
He's tired.
I'm tired.
I got a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Hi.
Chair Lewis?
Aye.
7 ayes.
The next item is the county attorney's report.
Mr. Chair, I have one item, I'll be brief. In fact, this is an item I think the administrator was going to bring up, so we may share this item. As you know, the schools received notice that someone nominated or asked to expand the Prices Fork Historic District to include the school, Prices Fork Elementary School.
All right.
And so the schools forwarded that to us, asking us, do we have any comments? And we've looked at it. And I think me and Craig both agree that at this time what we would recommend is that Craig sent a letter with his signature, the board's consensus, and he put that in the letter, he's got the board's consensus, that we ask the school board as the current owner to ask them not to include the school in the historic district expansion. The reason for that is we don't know what that building's going to do in the future. We're going to probably put that property, I think, up for sale, including the building. The building may remain, it may not remain. If it remains, it can always be expanded and put back in the historic district. Not put back, but expanded.
Can be added later.
To include it. But I think we could be sending the wrong message if we don't say that, knowing that we're going to sell that property and that building may or may not remain. And so, I mean, that's our recommendation as a staff, and we wanted to get your consensus.
What's that, Prices Fork?
Yes, ma'am. The
Yeah,
Prices Fork School.
Everybody all right with that?
Yeah.
All right. We'll send
I
that out
guess.
tomorrow. That's all I have.
All right. Mr. Meadows.
Well, that took care of one of my items on my list as well. We, I think the comments have to be back to the state by the 20th, and we just have some real concerns, as Marty said, at this point in time. If that gets pulled into the historic district, it may create some issues as we try to ultimately dispose of the property. The only other thing I had was I just wanted to mention, tomorrow is the 11th anniversary of September 11th, and just ask everyone to pause and reflect tomorrow. There were several shows on TV over the weekend, some of the recordings and things that have just been released of what was going on that day, and I don't think the average citizen has any clue how horrific that day really was for a whole lot of people, including folks who weren't anywhere near New York or Washington that day. But certainly remember those that gave their lives, and that's all I have.
Supervisor Tuck.
One of the things I promised to do was admit when you were wrong. And last week I talked about some of the jails, and we are housing state inmates, or what used to be state inmates, for longer periods of time. One of the inaccuracies is I'm now aware that there's one person completing a 30-month sentence. So that we're talking about 2.5 years that the state has not come and picked up that inmate that we're paying for. But another inaccuracy was in regards to the rec field that they get twice a week. They are allowed to go out, it's a covered area, they can actually see outside that twice a week rec period. There are programs that the regional jail does implement, but they are not, it was not designed to be a prison. And that is what it's becoming. And so again, I want us to take a look at trying to provide the Sheriff's Department, maybe working with them, to look at doing some different programs, getting them out to work. But at the same time, if you make a mistake, I believe in owning it, and I made a mistake. I should have double-checked my sources a little closer, and I apologize for that. And I appreciate all the well wishes. I've had my rabies shots. Even though that on some of the votes you didn't vote with me, I promise not to bite you. But I'll be going through that series apparently, and to be taken care of just as a precautionary matter.
Is the goat still alive?
They have to behead the goat, and that's part of the process. And then I didn't have a backhoe yesterday, and so I had to try to make the decision. They want it 6 feet in the ground, or they want you to burn it. Well, think how dry things are. So yesterday I cleared out an area of dirt and burned it and tried to take care of it that way and get in the fire hot enough to destroy everything, and making sure no other animals come along and do that. But made me appreciate the someone with a backhoe. I went to some neighbors, but they were none were available. But maybe I'll go and invest in one of those.
All right, Supervisor Brown.
Question, and I don't know, I've got a call from a lady who lives over in Merrimack, and what she told me was some people were hauling some trash and debris from the Rapids trailer park there, mobile home park there, dumping it on their property. And she said it became an eyesore. She had called, I guess, the deputy that takes care of that, and he went to those people and told them, he gave them a warning, they had to move the stuff off of the property. She contacted the deputy back, and he says, well, if it's not gone by Friday, what are you going to do? He says to her, what she tells me, I don't know how true it is, but the deputy said, that was all that I could do. And she said, well, can't the county send somebody over and clean up the property and build? And I explained to her, we don't have resources like that. Her question was, do the county have an ordinance prohibiting dumping on like their private property?
Sure. Yeah, there's an ordinance where you can't dump on your own property. If you're dumping on someone else's property, there's probably an ordinance against that, but it's also trespassing on that person's property. And it's really up to them, I think, to enforce
I think this person was dumping on their own property.
on their own property.
Yeah, but
Robbie?
come up here to the...
Well, I know Billy Saunders enforces all that.
Yeah.
I received the initial complaint from Mr. Brown.
Oh, okay.
I gave it to Deputy Saunders.
Right.
He went out and talked to them, supposedly they were the maintenance workers at a trailer park over there in Merrimack.
Right.
He gave the landowner, I think he may have informed you about this man, but he gave the people, said you cannot do this, it has to be cleaned up. And he said he was going to check on for in periods of time, and if it was not cleaned up, then he would charge them. So he has given them time, progress. And I see Billy every morning on the phone or going out and having additional pictures where he gives these people a set amount of time and they have to make progress. If not, he goes and gets them more.
Thank you.
And just to support what Billy does, that's a good program to do, because that's the first thing the judge asks when you go to court is, did you give this person time to clean it up? And Billy can always say, yes, I worked with him, and I'm only here because he's no longer working with me. And that's when Billy does a good job of getting that cleaned up.
Well, it's three sides to every story, and that was this lady's side. And I said, well, I will ask.
Well, the initial day was she called down here and tried to talk to somebody at the county, and she couldn't get nothing from the county. Then she called up there, and she was worried about Hurricane Isaac coming, and it was going to scatter stuff from one end of Merrimack to the other. So.
That it?
That's it.
Supervisor Biggs.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you all for the flyers for the community meetings, and also thank Carol for putting together the presentation. It looked good, I think. I think those are all the things we really wanted to get out there. Got them. That was good. Thanks.
Supervisor Perkins.
I echo Ms. Biggs on that one. That's good. Are you going to bring this up?
No, you got it.
What?
Go ahead.
Oh, all right. Mr. Pelosi and I went to a meeting the other night for the Montgomery County Educational Foundation. And we brought some flyers back, which I don't mind sharing with you all. You might look at them. If you get one that I've written on, just give it back. We, I'm glad. Okay. And look inside also of what their plans and their goals are. And there are several people that are across the county from various sections. I think the only one that's not there is Charlottesville, because you all have your own Mountain View Foundation down there, but this is a school, this is essentially just for schools. And so what they are hoping to do is, if you read this flyer, is to simply get contributions to the foundation so that things can be done for the school system that perhaps cannot be done by public tax funds. One of the things that they were questioning, and you help me, Jim, on this one, is whether or not it is legal to maybe, you know how you have a checkoff for a political campaign on your federal taxes? If on your real estate taxes, there are people, and you know that we've gotten, and the treasurer will tell you, we have people who donate tax or donate money every year, or say on their tax things, or send an extra check in, this is for schools only. And so is it legal, or would it be legal, or could you investigate for them whether or not it would be possible on your real estate tax ticket to check off $5 or $2 or whatever? I don't know. I don't even know if that's something that we would even want to think about doing. But they did ask that question, right, Jim?
Right.
And of course, we couldn't answer that, and we didn't even discuss whether or not it was a good thing to be done. They just simply asked us to find that out.
It probably, I can't see them writing a check for $500 and checking $5 of it off to schools. They probably could do something like AEP, the Good Neighbors part. You pay your bill, and if you want to contribute above that,
Yeah.
Right.
to Good Neighbors.
Yeah, I think that's the way, because the reason the check works in the tax returns, because it's a refund. They just
Right, I know,
Right.
I know, because you get a refund. But we don't do that on the local tax situation.
Yeah.
As I said, we didn't discuss the merits of it, we didn't talk about it, we didn't do anything. They simply asked that question, and I
The
said,
main reason it came up
yeah,
was
was Mr.
how are they
Pelosi.
going to reach out to people to let them know the foundation exists? This foundation, Ms. Perkins mentioned, has been in existence since 99 or 93 or something?
Oh, it's been in existence since '89.
89?
Yeah.
They have $12,000 in it. It's never been active.
Right.
So Joe Ivers and who was
Connie
it?
Foggett
Yeah,
and
Connie Foggett.
And the Sarah Wolseley from Matt's area, they're the ones who have been pushing it along with
Yeah, they've taken it upon themselves to go throughout the county and have public meetings and let people know that that's there and what they're going to try and do with the money. And, you know, they just need good ways to reach out to people.
And actually, this whole brochure is their attempt to try to explain where they are, what they're about. And so Mr. Politis and I said, well, give us some copies of your brochure, and we'll be happy to take those to our board members just to see, after you've had time to think about it and digest it and see where things are, to whether or not you want to have any part in it, or you want to support it in any way, regardless. So that's what it's about. And they were very clear. Oh, and Susan Morikawa, who used to be on the school board. If you know Andy Morikawa, he was in charge of the Community Foundation, and so he has given them a lot of free advice about how you go about doing things. And whether or not they will end up using the community foundation as a depository for the funds is a possibility, which is a good thing. And they do want to award grants eventually for a number of things, not necessarily just scholarship, but grants to teachers who, just like the Community Foundation does, they award them for about $500 or $1,000 or something. But anyway, one of the things is that there are school divisions all over Virginia that do have foundations. And I think they're out looking at some of those. The only one that I know about personally is Hanley High School up in Winchester. And a judge there left all of his estate to the school system. And of course they named the school for him. It's Judge Hanley, it was. And that was quite a bit of money. And they have things with that school that are just amazing. Simply from that particular foundation. So I think looking at hope for the future would be to have a foundation that would be supporting various aspects of public education, but which certain tax monies cannot support. There's just not enough for that. Anything I left out on that one?
No, I think you did a pretty good job.
When are they meeting? Do they have a meeting scheduled? I didn't know.
I don't know when the next one is. Joe called me because he was coming to Reiner.
Right, I'm sure they will come back and they will let us all know. It's not just exclusive. Mr. Politis and I are not members of the foundation. They just simply ask us to come because I had long ago asked, why don't we do something with regard to that foundation. It was something that was important, and also the school board member from my area of town is very much involved in it. Mr. Politis, because he was the chair. So I think from this point on, whenever they have meetings, anyone can become a member of the foundation if they want to.
They're also trying to build a foundation board.
Yes.
And they have representatives from Blacksburg and from Christiansburg, but none from Shawsville or from Reiner.
Right.
And that's, another one of their goals, so they can have each area represented, because they don't want people to be inclusive to one area with the money. They want it to be.
They did very specifically explain that this is not for one area, that whatever is out there is to be equally used by all the areas of Montgomery County. So basically that's all I have to say.
Okay. Supervisor Creed.
Yeah, I'll follow him right on the back of that and tell you about Mountain Valley Charitable Foundation. And what I want to tell you about it is that the renovation is started today on the old firehouse in Nelson. So that is underway. And as far as foundations and charitable foundations, most any foundation will distribute your money, their holding organization, whether it's that one or the Mountain Valley or whoever. And if you tell them what group, whether it be a teachers or whether it be for scholarships or whatever, no matter what foundation you have money to go in, that's exactly where they will put it. Mm-hmm. So, you don't have to worry about having 100 foundations. You can have one foundation and could cover the whole state of Virginia if they wanted to. Just all you got to do is write on that little check where you want it to be spent, and it's done. But I thought just the one thing about the renovation of the firehouse, it's underway.
Right. No.
Did you ever hear anything from VDOT about the
right away
property?
I did. He was getting gas when I was getting it. I got a cramp in my leg before.
You do what you got to do.
So that's all I have.
Mr. Gabriel.
Two things. One thing is just an informational point. Do we have any update about the status of the Christian Fork School? I think the last we had was that there was some confusion perhaps about them turning it over to us, and that needed to be clarified.
We are working, you want to tell them what you're doing?
Yeah, we've started the process of moving to a closing. We got a draft Alta survey today, and then we sent a list to the school board of what we needed. And two things we needed, resolution-wise, we needed a resolution certified that they've surplused it. We also need a resolution granting the authority to go ahead and convey that to us. And that may be in one resolution, maybe in two, but we haven't got that back yet.
Okay.
We should be getting that shortly. We exchanged calls with their attorney. I think he's been out of town.
Okay.
Actually, he owes me a call back.
It is moving. We just got to get the paperwork.
We should be closing, I would think, in a few weeks.
Okay. Okay, that's fine.
All right. Could I have one more second?
Yes, sir.
I have one thing. These are great. Only thing I'm wanting to know is who's distributing them and how are people to get to know that we're going to have a meeting in Charlottesville in 1 week.
Do you want to tackle that one? I hate for you to walk all the way up here. We've run advertisements in the Birds, also in the News Messenger. Is that right, Ruth? I saw the advertisement in the Birds, and I know that it was in the News Messenger as well.
Exactly.
We've got it on
also, it will be on our website. We've tweeted about it, and would certainly like to ask the board members to help us in any way that you can to distribute it to your constituents and any groups in your district.
Are these being
Were you
libraries?
And I kind of thought that might be what this was for, but you know, I've got landmass. This is one for about over 50 or 100 acres. No, less than that.
Well, what I've done is I had them put one up at the Buffalo store, and I'll get them to put one up at the Reiner Food Center, and things of that
And that's
nature.
well and fine, but you know, I come into Christiansburg and I go to Bradshaw.
Yep.
That's,
The other question, were you able to talk to the radio station about a public service announcement?
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. We are recording a PSA that'll be on our radio stations locally.
And the only thing I would say is that if you put something in the Birds, nobody from my end of the county ever reads that I can tell.
I wonder if my friend Marty is gone now, but have we contacted the News Messenger people?
The
it's going in
advertising will
there.
be in the News
Yeah.
Messenger.
I get an awful lot of people that read the News Messenger, awful lot. They do a good job covering the county.
I'll subscribe to it because.
Mr. Chairman, we're certainly happy to provide more copies of the flyers, or if anybody has any suggestions from other places that we could bring the notice to, we'd be happy to do that.
Have they been posted in the libraries?
Yes, in the libraries as well.
Okay. Well, I've got two things, real quick. Oh, I'm sorry, you're still going.
Yeah. Well, I had a point of discussion that, I was wondering, I mean, all this talk about the courthouse and things like that got me thinking about kind of capital improvements, and I'm wondering if, because the schools had asked specifically for capital improvement to Building C to run the wires and stuff like that, and we have a rather large surplus from this past year for capital improvements, if it might be worth talking about helping them out in that specific instance, devoting some money specifically to that, so that they don't have to incur that particular cost and might be able to devote that money to something else.
Like in the technology aspect? Or
Yeah, because they have that $100,000 line item there.
Right.
That is specifically for running wires and getting that building up and running, which, as I think we've all talked about, will be an incredible cost saving to get them in there as quickly as possible. So, and we're sitting on I asked Craig earlier today about $3.3 million roughly that has been unallocated.
That we didn't anticipate.
That we didn't anticipate. And this is a very small portion. That would be $100,000. Still a lot of money, but... And I wanted to know what the rest of the board was thinking about that. And perhaps this could wait to another meeting, or...
Well, I think, I mean, I would be in support of, if we could help them in some manner with, like especially the technology part of it.
I guess I'm looking at it and saying they've already got that in their budget that was just passed. We just gave them 431, well, not, I shouldn't say, they did save that money, they didn't spend it, and it's $431,000, so that should be covered with their surplus. Now, maybe at some point in time next year when we're starting to look at the budget again in January, February, we'll have those reserves if there is capital requests. I just think that we've taken care of that, even though I didn't vote for it. I mean, but
I agree with Chris on that
But
myself.
that's true. That part of the issue, however, is that they're devoting $258,000 to the move and the furniture. And I haven't seen exactly what the move itself was going to cost, but I was under the impression that it was rather significant because it's moving out of the Charlottesville Elementary School, moving out of Junkin Street, and getting everything into here, and then in addition to that, buying the furniture, which initially had been estimated to cost itself, just the furniture itself, $300,000. And they're certainly not going to have anywhere near that, to spend on that. So I'm just...
I was looking at this and it said $100,000 for the technology and telephone and infrastructure, and then $258,000 for the furniture move and moving. Okay.
That's right.
Well, I think this would be a discussion for another night. I'm the last one to talk. I guess I'll talk.
Well, that's almost, I mean, is it something that you wanted to take up as a motion tonight? Is that, or you said you wouldn't mind putting it off for another night?
I wouldn't mind putting it off for another night. I wanted to get kind of the board's feeling about whether it's worth pursuing. I mean, I thought that this is something that, I mean, as other people have said, I mean, it's the same pot of money, right? I mean, so if this is something that we can take care of, which is something that we've talked about wanting to deal with, which is capital improvements, then it might be appropriate in this particular instance.
I'll just say this about that, real quick. They haven't asked us for the money at this point. So, and we've got this set aside and ready to go, and I personally would prefer not to get into it tonight without some more input. At this point I wouldn't agree with it either, just because it's there. Let's see where we go. We've got furniture that's going to be reused. We've got a lot of furniture, I feel like, that we won't even move out of that building because it's not worth moving.
Well, then, I mean, and we might get to a point, and that's fine. I mean, if the board's will is that, we postpone this discussion, I mean, like you were saying, I mean, they're probably going to get to the point where they're moving the stuff out of Junkin Street, and it might actually fall apart in their hands, but we might get to a point where they're in Building C, and it's only half furnished. So that, I mean, I'd rather not get to that point where we have to have people sitting on the floor or something like that, but we can certainly.
I don't think we'll get to that point. I don't think we'll get to that point.
It is our building, though. Are they paying a cost to be in that part of room C, building C?
They won't be paying a lease payment. They will be paying a proportion of the utility cost, but we're providing it to them rent-free.
We're providing the space rent-free, but
Yes,
they'll
ma'am.
be paying the utility costs. They'll also, didn't we say, will they be paying part of the janitorial
Yeah,
cost?
some of
or
it.
the whole,
Yeah.
the whole cost, or
Right.
just part of it?
They'll pay a proportionate share of the utilities, janitorial. That was it, yeah, utilities and janitorial services. But as far as a square foot lease rate, they're not paying anything for that.
So it is our building, and we will make certain that their technology interfaces with ours?
No, they will have their own technology set up. Now, one of the things the superintendent and I are talking about is once we get them here and once they get up and running, we're going to start trying to figure out ways to get things integrated between systems, but that's not going to happen short term. That'll be a longer term project.
Well, what I'm saying, if we provided the technology cost, the $100,000, would they then be expected to pay whatever monthly cost that would be to operate all of that technology?
They will be paying their own telephone bill, their own upkeep of their network infrastructure and things of that sort, yes.
If it was ours, they'd have to pay that back to us? Would they pay us, I know they have to pay Verizon or whoever to get it from, but I'm saying would they have to pay us a cost for anything at all that would be involved with the technology?
No, I mean, again, what we did when we renovated Building C is we left the conduit and everything in place for them to set up the systems that they need to set up. If the county were to pay, you know, if we were to do what Matt suggested and pay that, the school board would still be responsible for the maintenance and upkeep and everything associated with that.
Okay. And paying whoever, okay.
Well, I'm happy to just leave it as a seed in your mind, a nice little hemp seed in your.
Thank you.
Perhaps it can slowly germinate over the next few weeks. So we can talk about it perhaps at the next meeting or even down the line if need be. So that's all.
Okay. I've got two things, and you know, this excites me. And we've been kind of quiet across the board about it tonight. And we had a real good meeting when we decided to do this. And I really want people to that we want your input at these pre-budget meetings.
Hey, Jim, announce some meetings in case people watch this on TV. Just announce them.
Okay. The first meeting is on Monday, September 17th at the Meadowbrook Center. The second meeting is Thursday, October 4th at Kipps Elementary School. The third meeting is October 15th at Christiansburg Middle School. And the fourth meeting is on October 29th at the Blacksburg Library. Now, what's important about these meetings is that it's going to be an open forum. There will be supervisors represented there, not necessarily from specific districts. We're all invited to all of them. And if you can't make the meeting in the library in Blacksburg, maybe you can come to the Christiansburg Middle School. So it's open, you know, all around. These are good meeting dates that we've been able to work out. And I think that this will give the opportunity for us as board members and you as citizens to get all the information you can.
You want to tell them what time they all start? They all start at?
They all start at 7 o'clock. Sorry, thank you. What did you say in your meetings?
We're the
But
chair
anyway,
that's helping you.
to me, this is exciting. And I will be handing these out to different businesses in our area, and I request that we all do that. They can put them on a window or whatever.
Don't stand out on Route 8 and do it, Jim.
I won't.
Don't hand them out.
The sheriff might get me for soliciting.
I don't think so. Oh, dear.
I didn't say that.
Yes, you did.
Anyway. My other item, I sent everybody a copy of a letter I received from Tom Sherman on the Habitat for Humanity program that he's working on, and apparently there are going to be 2 homes built in Montgomery County, and he is asking for a resolution of support from Montgomery County, And I sent emails with the resolution in it. And the invitation also includes us, if we can, coming to the groundbreaking on the first one, which is at 10 p.m. on October 9th at Nellie's Cave site. And then
10 a.m.
Yeah.
1 p.m.
Oh, 1 p.m. Okay, you said 10 p.m.
Oh.
I was like, that's
1 p.m., I'm sorry, 1 p.m. It's getting late.
Jim, you're really tired.
And then this is a home that will be built for a family in 1 day. They have over 150 volunteers already.
That's really cool.
Ready to go. If any of us board members would like to volunteer, they'll accept it. But they would like us to come and be part of the ceremony. And the actual house will be built on November 10th. So that's my spiel for tonight.
Should we
And
discuss, do we need to discuss the resolution, or? do you
Oh,
want-
yeah.
Can we pass it?
We haven't passed it. There's been a sample resolution sent by
Right.
What I'd
Tom, and it was sent to the town of Blacksburg and to us, and they're asking us to
Right.
support the resolution.
If there's a consensus, we'll be glad to have that on the next board agenda for your,
Yeah,
okay.
everybody all right?
Yeah.
I'm going back.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry, thank you.
Should I hold up 2 thumbs, one for Gary
Yeah,
too? I'm sure.
yeah, one for Gary too.
Okay.
All right. If there's no other business, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for the late night.